I'm Avital Ash.
I'm Jessica Richards.
And this is...
He's right behind you.
Ah!
He's right behind you.
Today, we have a guest, Megan Rosati, in the house.
Hi.
Hey. How do you want us to introduce you? / you're about to introduce yourself.
You could call me a filmmaker.
Yeah, that's right.
Ooh, I
a
love
filmmaker
that.
and a writer and an actor.
Triple threat.
And a director, filmmaker. I make stuff.
Yeah, would you separate director from filmmaker?
Yeah, I
Really?
would. Yeah, because I think, well, I know a lot of people who are directors who can like execute somebody else's vision really well. And that's not quite where I'm at yet. I can execute my own vision.
One of those words refers to that?
I think, well, also filmmaker because I've produced a lot of my own stuff.
Right,
So
right.
it's like really like made it, I think it encompasses for me more the process of like making it happen. Because
Yeah.
I've produced a bunch of stuff that other people also have directed, but it still
Right.
feels like my project. Like I got the actors and I told them what to
Right.
do.
And you wrote it.
Yeah,
It's
and I
your
wrote
vision.
it. And I got the place. And so yeah, I think it's like a little bit of a difference.
We've had Lola on this podcast already, and she talked about being a part of this female horror anthology group called Fatale Collective. And Megan is one of the...
collective.
Yeah, and she has a fantastic short that hopefully will be online soon.
We're trying.
Yeah. You're trying to find the right place for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a good place to be, where
Yes.
people, you're like waiting for the most, I was going to say lucrative, but that's not necessarily it, just the most enticing offer.
Yeah. And by waiting, I mean chasing down the people we want to put us on their platforms. Being like,
Well, I know
please.
you've had some offers.
Yeah.
So you're in a good place where you're like,
Yeah.
we're not going to just take anything.
That's always nice.
Yeah. And this is Megan and Jessica's first time meeting.
Hello.
Oh, yeah. And I sometimes forget to say this, but it warrants it here because I think it's a pretty cute story. The way that I met Megan was she was producing a web series called 52 Ways to Break Up, which, check it out.
Still on YouTube.
It's really fun.
For free.
Each episode is a breakup.
Yeah, each episode is
wow.
like a 3 to 4 minute breakup. And it's not the conversation like where you split up your stuff. It's just the moment you know the relationship is over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it's like they could be drinking their coffee and you're looking at them and you're like, it's their birthday tomorrow, but I'm going to break up with them in 2 weeks. It's just that inner knowing because it gives it a little more. So it's like not all screaming fights. Some of them are sad. Some of them are funny.
Jessica has a rom-com podcast that you should probably be on at some point.
We see lots of breakups on rom-coms.
Well, it's funny because before that I was, again, making genre thriller stuff. And I showed the first episode of the breakup web series to my friend at the time. And she watches it and she looks at me in the end and she's horrified. She goes, "You made a romantic comedy." I was like, "Oh shit, you're right." Yeah, Avital, that's how we met.
So I had just done my sort of rom-com web series as well, and Megan posted maybe in a group looking for a PA, and I was like, I'll help out for no money. I'm not doing anything with my life.
No,
Wasn't
that's
that it?
different.
No?
I was looking for somebody to play a PA.
No, not yet.
Oh,
You should
that's
pull it
right.
up.
Oh my god! And then I was like, well, "You're so photogenic. Get on camera."
She had me be like, it's like her, and it's like a professional breakup or a friendship breakup.
Well, that was season 2, so that was my first friend breakup.
Yes. And she's about to go on stage with Melissa Hunter.
Yeah.
And I come in to be like, all right, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. And they're like, thank you, 2, thank you, 3.
Yeah, we rented out the old Meltdown.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that's like
Weirdly
on-
how we met also.
Yeah.
And it's commemorated
It's
on
like
film.
on camera. Yeah. No, that was my first friend breakup because I was like, honestly, I've been more devastated by losing female friends
Oh my God,
than
me too.
by boyfriend. You're like, you're supposed to go, but friends are supposed to be with you forever. And so I wrote this.
And women are smarter, so they know the meaner things to do and say. They can
Oh,
like
for
press your
sure.
buttons in a more active way.
Yeah, and in this this episode, I made myself the asshole. Like I played a girl preoccupied with her bad relationship, and Melissa was the friend who was tired of hearing it.
Relationships, I think, are a good segue into. Do you want to tell us why you chose? We're talking about Let the Right One In.
Yes.
So it's almost like she's right behind you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like only maybe one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Maybe one of my favorite movies of all time. I really love this movie.
Yeah, I
like
love it
it
too.
has my this is like my aesthetic in a nutshell. I'm like, yes, Can I would like to do this forever, please.
I mean, doesn't it make you want to go make a movie in Sweden?
Yeah.
Or just somewhere cold?
Yes. Well, I miss the snow, and I don't know. I think anyway. I could go on and on, but I think it's a really poetic, beautiful horror movie with like deep feeling, and I think that like it, and it's also very scary. But you feel so much for all the characters, and nobody is all bad or all good. It's like really complicated, and I think that the sympathy you feel for even the worst characters is just really, really fascinating. And also, there's just so many themes that it touches on that, like, I find so good and juicy.
Before we dive in, what is your relationship with horror? Did you watch a lot of horror growing up, or?
What's my relationship with horror? So I've had nightmares. I had nightmares, terrible nightmares.
You don't anymore?
My entire life. No, I still do. My relationship with horror, it's weird because I feel like I didn't watch a lot of horror growing up, but it really deeply affected me. And then I think it was in college that I got really into it as a genre. Like, I wasn't even allowed to watch a bunch of movies as a kid. I'm the oldest of 5, so I was known as the kid who, like Megan would get, this is when Blockbuster was real. So, like, I would get my own movie, and then the rest of my siblings would get a movie. And it's like Megan's weird indie foreign horror movie, and then everybody else.
What's the first one? Do you remember?
No, it was just like because I think I probably forced them to watch something like too disturbing, and everyone was like, from now on, you get your own.
You don't remember what it was?
No, it was just, but growing up, I did watch a lot of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
I love it.
I loved it. I thought that was great gateway horror.
Yeah.
And it's also really good because, like the Twilight Zone, sometimes the ending is just bad. Sometimes they're like, you're in hell forever.
Yeah.
And so it was really addictive to me that you wouldn't know if these characters would make it or not by the end of the episode. Like, sometimes you're just fucked, and then you have to sit with that as, like, a 10-year-old kid. Being like, you're a doll now. You're a doll now, you know? And then I think the next thing I got
Goosebumps was the same way.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Never
Yes, the
Goosebumps
endings
was the
were
same way,
like,
too.
They could leave you fucked up.
Sometimes, yes, and those fucked me up, like, real good.
I think Goosebumps almost always had sort of bad endings.
Yeah,
They
Not
all like
bad, but
scary stories
scary.
to tell in the dark. Those short stories, they had some endings that were like,
But those books were more like the drawings are what stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those illustrations are so fucking weird. And then I got really into, I think it was in 5th, 6th grade, X-Files.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was, again, forbidden to watch because, like, my dad came down and saw an episode one time where it was like some girl was part of a satanic cult, and she was explaining how she gave birth early and then, like, killed the baby and buried it in her backyard. And my dad was like, you're not watching this show. But we had a TV in the basement. So there was like an upstairs TV and a basement TV. So every Friday or Saturday, I'd be like, I'm just going to like go watch TV by myself for a bit and then go downstairs and watch it. And I could hear them. This was my own personal horror movie. I could hear because they were basement stairs. I could hear them coming down the stairs. So it gave me enough time to like change the channel to something pretty innocuous. But yeah, so I'd be like, creep.
You're like the teenage boy watching porn, only it's horror movies.
Only I'm just like really trying to watch my X-Files. But yeah, so those things, and it was the same thing because I really like the Monster of the Week episodes for those too.
oh, yeah.
They just had great, and it was like a little movie every week. Like
Oh, for
X-Files
sure.
really changed the game, I think, because the production value was so good, like for the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, I remember there was an X-Files episode a million years ago that was about Men in Black. And like this real thing that people had reported and was like really scary. And who are these people? And then when the movie Men in Black came out and it was a comedy, I was like, you're missing the point. It's supposed to be scary. Who are these men? Where do they come from? Like, who are you working for, Will Smith? Like,
On the note of nightmares, I've had so many, like some of the scariest experiences and images that will stay with me forever have been from my nightmares. I'm having one recurring nightmare. I feel like Jessica will appreciate this.
Oh, no.
Where it's really not that bad, but just where I've watched a movie and it's ending and I can't find the remote and it starts to play the next movie and it's something really scary and I can't turn it off, which is basically just this podcast.
Oh my God, that's well. And so then this is back when HBO was like the only like weird channel. So I would like watch HBO movies late at night, and so that's how I ended up watching Cube and Event Horizon.
Oh, that
both
one's
of
That
which
comes up on here a lot.
both of which are highly fucked. And
Yeah.
it's like I would start watching them at 11:30 and be like, oh, I'll just watch a little bit of this, and then get really disturbed by it and then have to finish it. Because I know if I don't finish horror
It's
movies,
worse.
I go to sleep and I just play out the story
Yep.
in my head endlessly forever. And both of those movies, they finished and I was like, oh God, that didn't help at all. Now it's awful. Because Event Horizon ends and you're in hell in space forever. Like the end.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the
I have-
ending's not great.
No, and so that's like, and so I was left with both of those at 2 a.m, like, oh God.
that just reminded me that I have a nightmare that is exactly that. It plays out like it's a movie, and then it ends where you're like in this. Basically, you can't like move or function. You're just like frozen forever.
Ugh.
And it's that like weird impending sense of doom, but coming slowly, like you're just fucked forever.
Yeah.
And then I've started to have dreams where that movie plays and I can't turn it off. So I've like invented this horror movie.
And like
in
when
my
I was a
dreams.
kid, I also had HBO. And I used to get so scared when it would cut to the next program and it would be the opening for Tales from the Crypt.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it was like this like really like short thing where it'd go through a castle and it was going to end on the skeleton popping up.
And you had to change it
And I had to
before.
try to change it before the skeleton got out because then I was fucked.
I must have had that same experience because I immediately was like, I know where you're going.
Oh, so scared. And my family would be like, no, he's funny. He's the comic relief. And I was like, how dare you?
He doesn't
He's
look
haunting
funny.
me.
And then I got like consciously into horror movies because they're one of the few genres where women can do stuff
Yes.
that isn't about falling in love or trying to get the guy. And that's like, I remember when The Ring came out, I was obsessed with The Ring. Naomi Watts was like why I wanted to be an actor. I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
oh yeah, because she's like a fucked up journalist who's like not a great mom, who's on her own like story in that movie. And I was like, this is so amazing. Like I hadn't really seen a character like that affected me that way. So
And she's the hero.
yeah, and she's the hero. So I think so. Like having women be the set, like having female heroes on their own journey, is like what like really like made me love horror movies. I was like,
That's
oh yeah,
when we started talking about doing this podcast. That was we were talking about it, and I was like, the reason I love horror is because in action movies, the man saves the woman, and in
Yup.
horror movies, the woman saves herself
yep.
Yeah.
because the
Yup.
men are all dead.
You know what made me want to be an actor, and I never connect these dots, but was Buffy, which did have horror elements. Like I'd never
for
thought of it
sure.
as a horror.
Especially the first season. The first
Yeah.
season is much more.
It was really the
hoary.
first season that I was like, I think I wanted to be a vampire slayer, and that wasn't a job. So then I was like, okay, I could be an actor. That's the next best thing. That's what Sarah Michelle Gellar really is, you know? But yeah, there was like this love of horror that I wouldn't embrace until recently because it was scary.
Well, but and for me too, it's like I was like maybe if I like watch my nightmare, it'll take away some of my actual nightmares power, which is not really what ended up happening. But no, I'm a fan.
Yeah, do you feel like there's less horror in your life now that you're channeling it into your art?
No. Okay. Well, and it's funny because like right now I'm writing a horror movie called Bridesmaid, and it's set at a wedding, and it's like very feminist. But I've been having.
I love everything you're saying so far.
Yeah. But I've been having nightmares about weddings.
Oh, wow.
Where like I'm getting married, but there is no groom. It's not like, oh, it's this ex or this, but no, there's just like no groom. And I'm like, oh God, I have to tell people.
It's like the Lizzo song / music video, but like a scary version.
But like my entire extended family is there and all my sisters are mad at me. Like that's my actual horror.
Oh no. I keep having like packing nightmares where I'm just running late for a flight and I'm not sure what to pack and there's not enough room and I've been having it for like 6 months.
Oh, I always have. I get these this time of year, and they last for a while. But I have Christmas tree nightmares because my mom always waits till the last minute to buy a Christmas tree, and we've ended up with like bushes. And I have these like dreams. I've had them for probably 8 years now, where it's Christmas Day and we don't have a tree and nobody cares but me. And I'm like trying to convince people, and everyone's like, "What's the big deal?"
That's like me, but the tree is the groom.
It's basically the same dream.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's all anxiety, guys.
Yeah.
Dreams are all anxiety.
Well, and I actually ended up writing my first feature screenplay which was a zombie movie. I wrote that with, again, Melissa, because we were both having recurring zombie nightmares.
Whoa.
And like it was so wild. So it was recurring zombie nightmares for me in that, like in my first zombie nightmare, because I was watching a lot of zombie movies at the time. This was a couple years ago. And The first one, it was like I would be with a bunch of people I didn't know and I would die immediately. And then the next time I had the dream, I'd be with like some people I kind of knew, and then we'd like hide in the closet for a minute and then die. And then it was like more people till eventually I was like with a group of my friends in a car with a plan. Like it got better and better until the last one that I had. I remember it so vividly. I was like in an office building on like the corner of Wilshire. Like you could see all the way down Wilshire because there was like glass and we were like way high up and there were military troops with guns.
You're like fleshing out your dreams.
Like it was like like there was like a whole military operation. Like how would you
notes?
Yeah.
More specific.
You're giving yourself notes.
Right. And then in the dream, someone comes up to me and is like, all right, what do we do? The zombies are coming. I'm like, what do you mean, what do we do? They're like, you're the one who had all the dreams. You're in charge. Like, what do we do? And I was like, no.
I love this.
Cool.
I'll watch this.
Yeah. I was like, what the fuck?
I get goosebumps.
I know. And that's when I was like, okay, this is haunting me and I need to like do something about it and like put this on paper because now my own subconscious is making me responsible.
Right.
This is not cool.
Wait, and was Melissa having similar dreams?
Yes, she was having reoccurring zombie dreams too.
Wow.
And because it's just like zombies are such a great metaphor for like whatever is making you anxious because they have no... You know, they just want to like eat your face.
Yeah, zombies never scared me for some reason. Zombies and aliens. I know people who are really afraid of alien movies.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
Did you ever see Wreck?
Don't like space.
No.
Oh, it's the most fucked up zombie movie.
Really?
Yeah, it's Spanish. Watch the Spanish one. They remade it in English, but
we'll add it to our list.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the last scene of Wreck is like the scariest. It's the scariest zombie movie.
Is it one of the scariest images you have in your brain?
Yeah.
Maybe you should come back for that one. Without telling us. Normally we'd be like, describe it, but before we watch it.
I watched that with Melissa for research and like I like had to like hold her hand and talk her through it the entire movie. She's like, it's gonna be too scary. And I was like, okay, so then this actor
he's still alive. He has a whole family.
Yeah, he actually has a disease called blah 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 syndrome.
Which is maybe scarier than whatever you're watching.
No, it was like behind the scenes.
Right,
so
like they're real people.
Yeah, like to contain. I'm like, it's pretend. It's like the grown-up version of being like, it's all pretend.
You're so nice about it. I remember having slumber parties in like middle school and I would put on scary movies because that's what you fucking do at a slumber party. And people would lose their minds and I would be like, it's a movie. Do you want to go home? I will call your parents. Because I just could never understand that, like, being that scared to watch it. I'm like, we're in a group of friends. We're sleeping in the living room together.
Right.
What are you scared of?
The horrors of my own brain.
Which I do think, I'm shocked that I even asked you that question where I was like, do you think writing about it has decreased the horror in your real life? But like, people do love to do that. Like, oh yeah, artists, they sort through their shit in their art. And it's not true. Like, you try to, but it doesn't go, like,
sometimes I think it helps you appreciate it more.
Well,
appreciate what you're going through?
Well, yeah, because you're using it.
Well, I'm sorting through my own shit, but it's like the horror movie part about it for me is the main character is a writer who is in her mid-30s and she's single and all the other bridesmaids are being mean to her. And they're like, she looks like a writer. And literally it took me a page. It took me a day to write that page where they talk mean shit about her. Because I'm like, this is so real. Whereas the monster horror stuff, writing is fun for me.
Right.
So
I
it's
have
like
so much of that Mean Girl stuff that I want to channel somewhere.
It's the Mean Girl stuff. It's the and this is like in Let the Right One In. To me, the scariest parts of that movie are the bully stuff.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what's real. And so like that's also why I love that movie because like for me, I say like the horror parts of what I make are stuff that happens in real life that makes you actually feel bad. And then the horror elements stylistically are for me the release. That's like this is all pretend. Like we're not really gonna like, oh, like in real life, just like you get bullied and like maybe the kid dies, like the end. It's just a bad story. You're just like, oh, I feel sad.
Yeah.
But, in a horror movie, a vampire can help him take revenge, you know? And so then there's this, and so while that might be a scarier image, emotionally, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
And so I like that bait and switch, Like I like to sit people down and be like, you're in for a horror movie. And then the parts that make them, like to me, Curb Your Enthusiasm is the worst horror movie I've ever seen. Yeah. Like I can't sit through it, but without being like, oh my God, this is awful.
Yeah, that show makes me sweat. I can't watch it.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable.
That's how I
Meet
felt.
the Parents movies.
I felt that way with Pen 15. I couldn't get past the first episode because it was too real.
interesting.
And I started sweating immediately.
Oh, I loved it. I played the French horn in 5th grade, so I was like here for it.
My favorite thing with horror movies is I've always been drawn to where the horror just functions as like a metaphor for all the literal stuff that's happening too.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
Pan's Labyrinth is a great example of that,
Yeah.
or like the Babadook, where
Well,
the depression is the monster.
Oh, I
you
said
know?
in the Babadook, the worst part of that movie is the first 45 minutes where she's a single mom dealing with a special needs child without enough resources.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
oh God, get off the swing set. Like that's what made me really
Or-
anxious and sad.
Without spoilers, the beginning of Midsummer I thought was the most.
which I haven't seen still.
Yeah, so we
Oh,
won't
yeah.
we won't spoil it, but just the grounded stuff before you get into any of the horror elements. I was like, there's no way it's going to be scarier than this, and I don't think it was for me. The beginning is scary, and same with Ari Aster's other.
Oh, Hereditary.
Yeah.
Well, I think he does that really well. Where the thing that I'm talking about, where he's like, here's a horrible, awful
Right.
thing in life. Now let's
Here's a
add some
relief.
genre elements to
Yeah.
it, because I think if that's like a straight drama, you're just like you just leave
too
feeling
much.
so
Yeah.
drained. Whereas if there's this like element of fantasy in it, you know it's not real.
I heard he tried to get it made as a drama, Hereditary, and he couldn't.
Yeah, and he's like, "Fuck you, it's a horror movie," and
Yeah.
everybody loves it.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting. All right, well, let's dive into it.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen this since the theaters.
Oh,
So that was
I,
really
yeah,
fun.
I didn't see it in theaters, but I hadn't seen it since it came out. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think we rented it pretty quickly. Because I know we saw it before they did the American version.
Yeah.
Because then as soon as that came out, I remember being like,
Let Me In was the
oh, I
American
could have seen one that didn't have subtitles.
Oh, see,
I've heard it's good too.
it's good.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
It's good, but it's not like special in the way that this movie
Yeah.
is. I
Well,
think
it's
this movie is like a little jewel box of like I don't know, it's like a poem or something to
Yeah.
me. Like I think there's a real quality to it. And Let Me In is like a serviceable horror movie.
That's hard too if you're the director of that movie to like make something that's your own that they want you to copy
Right.
the exact movie of somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make that special?
Well,
Right.
there's like a couple cool sequences in it, but I really think the relationship between the two main characters in the Swedish version has something unique to it that like Chloe Grace Moritz just doesn't really capture.
I do really like her. But
I really like her, but
I want to say that I don't know if like Americans capture.
Yeah.
Because watching this movie, I did then go and watch the trailer for the American one because I was like, how does that translate? Because it does feel so foreign, like literally foreign
Yeah.
to me. Their whole vibe with each other.
yeah.
And especially, I think for me, because we live in LA where it's generally pretty warm, and I'm from Miami where it's really warm, hearing people speak a foreign language in the cold makes it feel somehow more magical. And that's just like me being a small-minded American who's like, the only people I know sound like me. But
No,
you know.
100% too. And it's like Swedish, which is like fairy language as opposed to
Yeah.
like, you know, German or something more prosaic.
Yeah, right. And I think it's also I have this association of like, you know, sadness. Like, what's his name? The big filmmaker who, why am I forgetting his name? With all the black and white stuff and priests and,
Oh,
you
no,
know.
I don't
Oh,
know.
Bergman. Thank you.
Amazing.
I got myself there.
All the black and white stuff and the priest.
The priest
Yeah.
is usually a.
But you were right. It's like, oh, the one Swedish filmmaker. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Bergman.
Yeah. To me, everything set there kind of feels like
Yeah, yeah.
Bergman-esque.
Okay.
I did think, though, even though it feels foreign and I like it, I was like, this could be very American in terms of like, this is Melania Trump's Be Best campaign, the anti-bullying campaign. I just kept thinking Be Best. There were these like bullying scenes and I was like, fuck my life.
I get so maybe because I'm an adult now, but I get so surprised by like kids bullying scenes because I was a girl. So like our bullying is like telling me that I look great and then going around and being like, who does she think she is looking like that? You know, like I had much
Yeah.
more of the mental self-esteem bullying.
Well, I
So-
was like, please beat me up. Like, because I found the mental bullying so.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm so surprised whenever I see these movies where there's like really intense physical bullying. I'm always like, oh, that's a psychopath. Someone call somebody's parents because I just never dealt with that, and I never saw it either when I was in school.
Well, I did relate to there's the idea that there's this like whole secret world that parents don't see.
Yeah.
Because it's like I didn't tell my parents about, the time in chorus when like girls threw things at me and then like said I had bugs in my hair and like giggled and I could hear it.
Right.
Like what would that have done?
Right, right.
And so there was so much that I like dealt with at the height of when I was bullied that my parents didn't know about that felt like, getting whipped by the rod by
I
the
love you pointing that out because I
kid.
had that too. I remember like there was one sort of physical attack when I was 5 and lived in Israel, and I like my first ever boyfriend, where we like kissed each other on the cheek under this really pretty tree or whatever. But we were neighbors, so he would walk me back from school, and I think girls were just like, "That's your boyfriend?" I don't know. It was very upsetting to them at the time, and they threw rocks at me.
Oh God!
And a rock like hit me in the head, and then all these girls went and hid, and then somehow the parents knew. Like I don't remember telling my mom, but somebody must have seen, and then everybody was trying to find the kids that did it and yell at them. So they knew about the physical bullying, but the emotional stuff, I never came home and was like,
Oh, I told my mom everything.
"Oh, that's nice."
Oh no!
I told my mom everything, and my mom's like way to try to handle it was always like less. She's so nice and supportive, but a lot of times it was like, oh, they're not, like it was a thing. It was a thing in middle school where on your birthday they would wrap your locker. Your friends would all wrap your locker with like wrapping paper, and there'd be balloons, and it was a big thing. And my friend said she was gonna do it, and my mom knew that she wouldn't because she was like, this snake in the grass isn't gonna do it. And my mom was like, I'm gonna go to your school and do it. And it was always that thing where it's like, that's going to make it worse.
Yeah.
My mom was always like, I'll be your friend.
Oh. Yeah, my
Not
mom was
super
like,
helpful.
what did you do to provoke this bullying? So I was like,
no.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just forget it, Mom.
Maybe if you didn't have such a face.
I know, whereas my mom's like, those cunts. My mom totally saw everything from my 12-year-old point of view.
Well,
that's
nice.
lucky.
That is really nice.
Well, and that's so this movie I related to on multiple levels because also I moved a lot as a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never
Up until
moved.
like 6.
You never moved?
No, my mom still lives in my childhood home.
Oh, see. So I related to both halves of both of the kids' experiences because I was bullied and I had the experience of moving a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
people being like, "You're weird. Who are you? Where did you come from?"
Right.
No, I've lived here for longer. And I'm like, I can solve puzzles. 'Cause puzzles go with you.
So you relate to her in the Rubik's Cube.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I relate to Eli in the movie. I'm like, yes, I'm a 200-year-old child vampire.
Which I do feel a little weird about some of the intimacy. I'm like, is this pedophilia? It's fine because she looks like a kid, and also supernatural realms probably have different rules.
Well, I think it's also
It's a friendship more than
well,
anything.
it feels like it's almost set up like when now this is my reading of it.
Yeah.
Is that when you Eli becomes a vampire when she's 12 and
She
that she
stays
just
that-
stays emotionally
yeah.
12.
Well, yeah.
Kind of how it feels.
Yeah, and I I've done a lot of reading about this movie, so it's based in a book.
Yeah. I saw that.
And I think the creepy relationship between them again makes it more perfect because every element of this movie is creepy.
Right. And in this gray area. kind of
Yeah,
like what you
and
were
is
saying.
in this morally ambiguous because you're like, okay, so if Eli's hundreds and hundreds of years old, is this a predatory relationship?
Right.
But also, if Eli is also stunted at this space, being 12, I remember being 12 and not feeling my brain like I feel it now. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Certain
yeah.
things were inaccessible to me. I was confused by things. I was oh my God, what if you just stayed in that space? You'd be a wise 12-year-old. But I think that there's something really interesting
Right.
in that concept. But okay, so here's the theory. Eli has this other caretaker throughout the whole movie.
Okay, can I just say,
Yes.
to me, this is the scariest thing, and this is the thing I remembered most vividly, is that, we're basically having Oscar set up to be one day this not irrelevant caretaker, but this disposable caretaker.
That's
That's
so
what
do you
stayed
think
with me.
the in my notes I just kept saying serial killer. Do you think the serial killer started out as 12 too?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do.
Oh,
yes.
yeah,
So
I never thought of this.
So Eli
Oh,
grooms.
this makes me-
That's all I
grooms
remembered, and
the
I was
caretaker.
like, this scares
And
me.
it's because I remember first seeing this and being oh, creepy, almost like child sex trafficking because there's this older man
Right.
who keeps the vampire girl. We'll talk about that later in their apartment all the time. And they seem
Right.
to have he's in love with her, and they have this
Right.
weird relationship.
He seems
yeah, this is all
predatory.
news
He
to me.
seems
I had no
predatory.
idea.
Oh, does this make you like the movie more or less?
Because they play it like a love story, right? They play Eli and the killer kid like a love story. But if Eli is like actually an old vampire, she's manipulating the whole thing.
100%.
And what's so great is you see it in the actress's eyes, like as she's like, what? Like, going steady? What does it mean? You see her make the choice to go to his room after she, gets rid of her other caretaker. Right. And so this is because like if you're 12, then you need somebody to navigate the world. Like you can't just wander around being 12 without being caught or like whatever.
Right. And at the end, they're leaving together.
Yeah.
To the next city.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate the ending.
I loved it.
To me, because I didn't put all that together. Everything you just said about the serial killer being a kid at some point. To me, this felt very Peter Pan.
Oh,
where I was like, no, Wendy has to say, I'm going to grow up at some point. And instead, like Oscar's being trapped in this, like, 12-year-old relationship where it's like, no, he needs to be an adult at some point.
But that's, I think, what's the scariest to me is that he is, grooming is the perfect word which Megan used. Like, he's just being groomed to basically probably kill himself at one point. Also, the heartless way that she kills her caretaker, like, that to me was so scary, and I didn't remember that, where when she drops him out the window, he's still alive on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
You see the breath because it's cold.
Very,
Steve.
Oh,
yeah.
I was like, just put him out of his misery. Like, kill him.
Well, he dies.
He dies, but slowly.
Well, yeah, and after that horrible face attack.
Yes.
Self-inflicted.
Which
but
he did
it's
for
very
her,
like
for
the
love.
Giving Tree.
Yeah.
Of like, she just takes everything.
Right.
And
he, like,
there's nothing left.
And but the last thing he says before he, fucks up his face is her name.
Yes.
And so you realize you're
know.
like, oh, the actual power is
Love.
and it's in her hands.
Right,
Like
right.
whereas you and he's like, please don't go over to his house tonight, and she touches his cheek really gently. It's like super fucked up because you're like,
Yes.
oh, she's in charge of this dynamic.
Yes.
And then she manipulates the kid to, be her next caretaker. And also the guy, he starts getting caught. Like, I just think the way they structure it is so beautiful because you see the rails come off their operation just in time for her to find like
The next
one who is actually ready to who's like on his way to be a serial killer. And I think that's
You think so?
Yeah. He's stabbing a thing, being
A
like
tree, not
a
an
tree.
animal, though. You think it's like a step before animal, which is a step before person?
Well, it's trying to get your power back in a violent way.
right.
And he researches all those things about serial killers.
Yes, I was wondering about that. I'm like,
And and like he has that little
scene in the class.
the scene in the class.
Wait, what scene in the class?
Where they're like, oh, how did we know that the people that died in the fire weren't killed in the fire?
Oh,
And
right,
the
right,
foul
right.
play thing, and he says
There
because there
wasn't
was no smoke in their
lungs.
lungs.
I just thought that was a smart thing
It's both.
and morbid, but not
No, but it's
serial
weird
killer.
if you're 12.
No, it's both though, and that's what's so great about it is like I related to him because I was like, yeah, I wouldn't know that because I'd be like, I read a lot. And people would be like, you're gross and
But
weird.
then he is clipping out these like murder
But
stories.
he's actually and then you see when he hits his bully, he's like excited by it.
Yeah.
He's not like, oh God, what did I do? Or feel empathy. He's like, yeah.
That's true. Jessica and I are each having these moments of, I didn't see that. Because to me, I just thought it was like taking power back as opposed to just being a victim.
It's both.
But I never thought about the fucked up, like, oh yeah. I kept waiting for the clippings to make sense and they don't really explain them.
No, it's just like he's fascinated by killers.
Yeah.
And then even the scene where she walks into his place and he doesn't invite her in speaks to like a coldness that I think.
But then he turns.
Then
and
he
he's like,
turns.
Yeah, yeah.
But because he's a kid. And that's that beautiful line that they walk where
Right.
like, he could have said, why can't I invite you in? No, he's like, no, you prove it to me.
Right.
And
Which
then he
I loved
watches her
seeing
bleed
that.
out for a little bit.
Yeah. I loved seeing them play with the rules in that way. Of like,
Oh,
they
I
still
loved
need to
it.
be invited in.
Yeah, because in every other vampire thing, they just can't enter.
Right.
They try and it's like a force field.
No.
Yeah. So I love him being like, what happens? Like, can you not penetrate this? Like, what? And then, she starts bleeding. And if he didn't eventually invite her in, would she die?
Yeah. I think it's like the slower version of Sunlight.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this vampire movie is because it does feel so like I fucking hate the Twilight vampires. It's like, no, you don't sparkle in the sun. You burst into flames. Like, come on. Like, we have rules here,
I love Vampire Diaries. They were daylight rings, guys.
Daylight rings.
Yes, you get a ring that's spelled by a witch so that you can be out in the sun. But if anyone takes your ring, you'll burn up.
Whoa.
Yeah,
I
like,
never watched
I don't
that.
truck
I
with
love
that.
I love Buffy. I love Vampire Diaries.
No, I like old school fucking hard ass vampires that just burst into sunlight. And the way the whole movie is shot shot too. Like the horror stuff feel like it all looks like it's lit by like shitty hospital lighting when when you're inside. Like just the way that it feels really grody and real, and like you see the guy kill the dude in the woods, and like his
that
neck,
was done so well.
Yeah, his blood goes into this like disgusting like bucket
Carton,
that's like all fucking like gnarly. Like I loved that.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was really. And so the way they like keep the rules very, very grounded in reality, like there's nothing sparkling. There's no like.
Right.
I think the only CGI is the cats, which is to me comic relief.
I think I feel like I read that they got rid of that for
They did.
Let Me In.
Yeah,
that was like the only thing I knew about Let Me In was I was like, they got rid of the bad CGI, which I remembered being worse than it actually was.
I think that, you know, and again, as a horror movie fan, the cats were my comic relief in that. I was like, she gets attacked by fucking cats. Like, cats would fuck up a vampire.
And then she's like a suicidal vampire, which I didn't remember.
She doesn't want to
live
the
way that she is.
And I loved that too.
That's also playing with the rules that she gets her blood sucked but isn't killed. But there's no, I feel like traditionally it's like she would have to also suck Eli's blood.
Well, in this...
It varies.
Yeah. In this world,
it varies.
That's why she killed or Eli killed the
Jock.
the guy that the older Yukke.
Yeah. Well, that's how it was spelled.
Yeah. No,
And are you saying Eli? I'm like Eli because that's how they say. You know, we don't know how
But back to the serial killer thing. So it's based on a book, and it's and I didn't read the book. The book is even gnarlier, and it's kind of like Carrie the book versus Carrie the movie. In the book, the kid is more explicitly a serial killer.
Oh, interesting.
And he's like 13 and like fat and like bullied for being fat too. So
that's why they keep calling him Piggy.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
So then you see
I'm a bully.
Right?
Yeah, they should call him Piggy if he's fat.
Well, because they
don't
kept
mean that,
saying it, and it didn't really mean anything.
I thought it was like squealing.
The squealing thing is where I was like, okay, so it's like a pig out to slaughter kind of a thing. Maybe that's what they're like, you're the victim.
He's scared.
But to me, the movie works
I'm from
so
America.
well.
You say chicken.
Right, exactly. I was like, I almost said the same exact thing. I was like, it's like in Sweden they say piggy instead of chicken. He's just scared and he'll squeal like a pig.
So I think they made him way more appealing in the movie because also so much of the appeal of that character to me was that actor who played him, who just like looked like a precious, sweet angel face baby,
right? His little cherub
with his white blonde hair.
His maturity level seems like he's 8, not 12. To me, he seems like he's so much younger than all the other boys. And I don't know if that's like growing up with a single mom where his dad's like far away or whatever, but he just seemed so much more like a kid than the other kids in his grade.
I don't. It's because he was very frail and like small looking.
Yeah,
and so I think
and porcelain. So he seemed fragile and breakable.
The stuff in the water where he just keeps like opening his mouth and like letting the water in the pool go in and out while people are talking to him. I'm like, that's so young.
Right.
Well, there's an innocence to him.
Yeah.
But like he looks like a teenager when he puts on the records and dances around.
Right.
So but I think it's the casting that partly is a big part of the appeal of the story to me because again, I have sympathy for this kid, right?
Ooh, it makes you want to read the book.
I know. Well, and then they were like, it's like a real gnarly. And then I was like, I'm okay. Like, I like this little, and the book is like 400 pages. And I was like, do I really want to think of this kid like a gross budding serial killer? I was like, no, I'm good with this version of the story. I like it better.
Because you mentioned the single mom thing, first of all, I did not remember the hot dad. Second,
hot gay dad.
That's what I was about to say. Okay, so then second, there's that like weird scene where this guy shows up and it's gay undertones, but it's not explicit. And I don't know, what do you think that's doing in the story? It feels like they never really bring it back.
I think it's partly to show the alienation or like how this kid doesn't have a parent he feels like he can rely on. Because to me, it was not so much that, although it's like problematic the dad is gay, to me it wasn't so much that he was gay as that he was
willing to discard their night,
discard their special time, which takes like he sees him once every 2 weeks.
Right.
It looks like on the weekend, and to just immediately start drinking with his fuck buddy.
Right.
Well, and I think the scene between him and Eli, where she's like, "Oh, you need to hit them back. You need to hit them harder." That's what a dad would say in these movies, and so I think it's almost like he's this fatherless in a way kid, and she to me kind of steps in like a parental figure, like a father figure, because she's the one protecting him, all that stuff that we traditionally put on the father.
Right.
And I don't know if that's what they're going for, but the idea of like if he's gay, maybe he's not as like masculine.
Right.
That's the problematic.
I was just about to say,
That's the problematic part to me. But again, it was in that moment, and this movie's so delicate. You're like, but the way they play it in the cinema of it is you focus in on his face looking disappointed that his dad is now drinking and not paying attention to him,
and the mom is working,
and the mom is always like is like off like yelling on the phone or something because she's busy being a single mom.
Right.
I know she almost reminded me of like in Charlie Brown cartoons or whatever, where you just see like the legs. That's what I kept. Maybe because I also couldn't understand her because it was like subtitled. But I was like, it's the same kind of idea of like, there's no parents in this world. There's no adults.
Well, and she's the caretaker. It's probably that's how it starts. Is like she's the caretaker and it shifts. And she's like training the boy to become the caretaker.
Well, and Eli's probably looking for a kid that doesn't have strong parents so that they can't like run away together.
Well, and same with someone who's bullied. It's like it's just like someone
you feel like your parents can't really help you.
Yeah.
Or who's being groomed.
Right, exactly. Someone who's vulnerable is like perfect for
grooming.
Yep.
One thing I'll say to defend the gayness of it, because I do think, that could be problematic. Like, what are you trying to say? But maybe it's this sense that the dad feels otherized in a sense, which makes him unavailable to his kid who's now being otherized by being bullied. And also maybe he doesn't feel comfortable saying to his dad, like, I met a girl. But I think that's a stretch.
No, I think you're right. No, there's like layers of shame to it because it doesn't seem like a culture where you could be like, my dad's gay and it's cool. Like it's like Sweden in like it looked like the 80s or something.
Yeah, I think it was set in the 80s.
Yeah. And so the vibe of it wasn't like, it was like very shameful. And then the mom is yelling at him about it. Like, if you were around, da 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 da. Like, there's not a lot of, it does feel very parentless in a way that like a fairy tale does. Like, what's the first thing you do in a fairy tale? The mom dies and the dad goes off into the woods to look for food. And then the kids are alone.
Yeah.
And so then you're in this space.
It's so funny that it is this love story, but I don't know if I feel like it's really more lust or
and I
obsession.
never thought it was a love story. You said that earlier when we were talking, and I was like, what is she talking about? Because my interpretation was never that.
Really?
Oh, it was for me. I was like, this is for sure the model of every romantic relationship I've been in. Like,
really?
I'm a cold vampire with needs, and I'm in love with somebody who is going to be a killer, and he just doesn't know it yet.
Oh my goodness!
So we know who you are in this movie.
Yeah. No, I still look at. Oh God, what's the main kid's name? What's his name? Oscar. Yeah, still
With
looking for the Oscar to my Eli. But no, I remember first seeing it in theaters with my ex at the time. With one of my exes, but my boyfriend at the time, and we were both like, "Oh, this is us," which like is fucked up in retrospect. I've also shown it to every guy I've ever dated as like a litmus test of like, what do you think?
And what's
that's so funny.
What's the right and wrong? Like, how do you know? How do you?
I don't know. I just love watching them get deeply uncomfortable at the one scene that's deeply uncomfortable.
Which one?
Where Oscar sees Eli getting dressed.
Yeah, I want to talk to you guys about that too.
Oh yeah. So, do you want to dive in?
Yeah, let's do
okay.
it.
Scene. She's changing. Oscar peeks in.
Okay. So
can you
at this
lift your
point,
mic up?
okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Thanks.
Okay. So I just want to remind you multiple times throughout the movie, he's like, "Will you be my girlfriend? I like you." And over and over again,
I'm not a girl.
Ellie says, "I'm not a girl. I'm not a girl. I'm not a girl." And so we as the audience are like, "Yeah, you're a 200-year-old vampire." But
You're a woman.
right. But in the
I kept thinking, not a girl, not yet a woman. I'm like, Britney Spears.
Guys, Britney
running
Spears
over
works for everything.
It's time, a moment that is mine. But in the book, so it's based on the book, and in the book, Ellie is actually a castrated 12-year-old boy.
Okay.
And so that's what that scene is. And so that's why it's so unnerving to, that's why I'm like, I almost feel like, what pronouns do we use? Because she, Ellie, they keep saying, I'm not a girl. Like very clearly is very clear on their gender. But you're like, yeah, because you're a child vampire. But then you see that scene where, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's incredibly shocking because it's a close-up of what looks like a child's crotch with no genitalia and like stitch marks on it.
Yeah. So it's not just castration. There's a different word for like removing the shaft also. It's like fully.
Is there?
There is. Well, because castration, isn't that just when you cut the balls off?
I guess. I don't know. I was just like, he's got no junk. So that's part of it. And then it also, like, if you think about it too, like how I don't even think a 12-year-old vampire girl would have lasted that long. Like that vampire child would have been killed in a vampire way. Like I think being a castrated boy is what protects him from sexual abuse. Or like
Very interesting.
Or like being trafficked in that, or like being exploited even more than
I wonder what the explanation is in the book.
Is
that
that
one?
Yeah, that's the explanation. That Ellie's a castrated 12-year-old.
But do they say the why? Is it to protect him?
No.
Okay.
It just happens, 200 years ago before he gets turned.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
I thought that it was something about, like, we see people turn, like the one woman with the cats who bursts into flames. I thought it was like some sort of marking to show that Eli was always a vampire rather than being turned. Like it was this is a new vampire rule that they don't have genitalia like we do.
You put a lot into it.
Yeah.
No, but it's so that's the reasoning. And so that's why.
Do you remember what you thought before you knew that?
No, I immediately was like, what the fuck? And like started Googling.
Yeah.
I just accepted it. I didn't know what it meant or why, but I was like, okay, well, she's having a problem keep saying I'm not a girl. So I was like, okay, there's something with that.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants to think too hard
works.
about it because it's real fucked up, right? It's, to me, one of the most shocking images in the movie because, like, again, we're not supposed to see that on a human level, right?
Right. To me, it was shocking more because it felt like a prepubescent mound that I'm not supposed to see.
Exactly.
But then I thought it kind of looked like a Barbie, and I was like, okay, maybe she's just born without any genitalia, and then these are scars from whatever.
No, but it's fully removed the junk. So
Wow.
which kind of keeps it even more sexless. So that like creepy, like they're in bed together, and like Ellie doesn't have any clothes on because she's just murdered her caretaker, and her clothes are covered in blood and snow. But there's also no risk of anything. There is no, pedophilia or whatever risk happening because it's not possible.
Well, it is if he uses,
I know.
They still can do it.
But not in the like girl boy way.
Yeah.
Not in that like explicit way. So
I wonder if the caretaker, how do you say his name?
Oh, serial killer?
no,
That's what I was calling him. I don't know what the
Well, she's calling one. I guess there's like potential future serial killer and active serial killer.
Yeah.
Well, because when the movie started, so I forgot what this movie was, by the way, because I saw it a million years ago. I knew the kid vampire and the kid not vampire, and it was about them.
Yeah.
That's what I knew. And so then when it started, and we see this guy kill somebody and then hang him upside down and draining his blood, I just wrote down serial killer because I was like, okay, cool. This is a movie about a serial killer who's stalking the small town, and then there's also a vampire.
Right.
And that the vampire is going to, like, get the serial killer and, like, save the day. It was going to be, like, a good vampire. And then immediately was like, I don't remember this movie. They're together.
Right.
Yeah, I remember
Because then
that.
as soon as the blood, I was like, oh, for a vampire.
Right.
Well, that's when you first see it, it keeps it. There's so many questions that it keeps hidden.
It does it really in a smart way.
Yeah, so it like teases it out because again, that's the ambiguity that I love so much about it because your sympathy is with Ellie.
Right. Even though innocent people are being killed. Which
Oh, that's it with the poodle. Where the poodle stumbles upon him hanging somebody draining the blood.
God.
Oh, it's so funny.
Good.
And he's like, get out of here. And the dog just sits.
Yes, that seems really well done.
Because I kept being like, is the poodle going to go back like covered in blood or something? Because the poodle is Snow White also.
Yeah.
And there's so much of like this crisp whiteness to the movie with like this stark blood color.
And I love like, to the point of not having sparkly vampires or setting things up in a way that's just like easy or romanticized. Like I love that because I was watching with Amir who's like, this seems very out in the open. Like he's very exposed. He's really risky with this.
And that's the thing. He's getting bad at it.
Yeah.
He's getting sloppy.
Right. Or I imagined that he was always sloppy, but they kept moving.
Yeah, or both, or like, and because he's old at that point too. Like it's not
something that I only.
Yeah, he does seem like tired a lot.
Yeah, he's tired. He's like reached
aging.
the end of his killer
well,
lifespan.
It's hard. You got to lift him all the way up.
Oh
like
my God.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That whole long scene of him carrying Jacques, I'm gonna say. I don't know how you say it.
Yucca.
Carrying him on the sled, and like it's such a long scene, and he's so labored the whole time. You can tell like he can't keep this up.
I thought initially that that's why he goes after kids because they're easier and smaller, but now I think it might be because he and Eli probably got together when he was young and he's stunted too, he still sees himself as a kid.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to go after kids.
Yep. I was going to say he might also be like, she probably targets people who are also going to like remain pedophiles, you know, who like are susceptible to being manipulated.
And I don't know even that he was ever a pedophile so much as he got stuck after being groomed in this very specific way.
Right.
And the only love for him is Eli.
Yep.
It's not even like I love children. It's like I love her, him, they, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's I think that's like another. It's great that it is sort of configured as a love story.
Yeah.
Right? Like the beats and how they hold hands and like there's like a romanticism to him. And like I think one of the most like I love the scene when the second time they meet where he has a Rubik's Cube and he's like, no, you go away. I live here.
Yeah.
And she's like, what's going on with it? But you see her be intrigued and you see him doing it on purpose to intrigue her.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so sweet.
It's so funny because Jessica's like, this is not a love story. You're like, this is a love story. And I feel like this is a love story in the same way as Midsummer or Midsommar. I know I never know how to say it. But in terms of like, it's not actually about love.
No, it's
about a relationship.
It's a fucked up love story.
Yeah.
But they...
Oh, and I heard him on a podcast. It's Midsummer.
Okay. I always say Midsummer and then people say Midsommar and then I feel stupid. So thank you.
I heard him on a podcast and he was like, no, it's not said that way.
Yeah, Midsummer.
He's like, that's how it's spelled because that's a different...
Well, that's how we put his umlauts on it. So that's your fault, Ari.
Yeah, you go home. I've lived here longer than you. That's what he says. It's so good. Oh, also before that, there's a scene. Can we just talk about, I thought this was the one thing that was like either didn't age well. I don't know that it ever would have made sense, though. That scene where they're like sitting at the table and the caretaker's at the other table and they're like, should we invite him to join us?
Oh, my God.
Maybe he'll buy a round. And then one of them says, in that case, he's welcome even if he has cancer. Which is like, normally you wouldn't.
Well, I was also like, is that a bad translation of whatever the phrase is? Is there like a phrase out there that's like...
Yeah, I wondered. Like, why would you... He has cancer. He can't sit with us. Or is that just more bullying?
No, I think that's just like the cliquey small town.
No, what's the one out? What's the one out here in America where it's like, it begins with an L?
Oh, I feel like I know what you're talking about. Leprosy?
Leper, yeah. I feel like that would be the phrase out here. It'd be like, well, even if he's a leper, he can sit with us if he's buying. I feel like that's our version.
Something more contagious.
Yeah.
Versus just like, you have cancer, stay away from me.
Well, what I took from
double
it
bad news if you have cancer.
Yeah. Well, what I took from it on this viewing is, like, again, the structure of this movie. I was like, ugh, I just love this from a cinematic standpoint, too, because you have the story between Eli and Oskar, right? Like, it's their story, and then you have Oscar's story where he's being bullied, and that's all kind of one thing. And then you have the weirdo, like the group of old people who like to sit in the cafe.
The townies.
The townie story.
Yeah.
And they die one by one. And it motivates the like remaining townie who just saw his girlfriend like go up in flames to go find Ellie in the room that she lives in. So it's like they could have just been random deaths, right? But instead they were like
stories.
No, they're all friends and here's the story and here's the dynamics. So it makes it like even more cohesive because by the time that guy goes to the remaining townie goes to, you know, kill Ellie, you're invested in him as a person. So his death is more shocking. His betrayal by Oskar is more profound, right? You know, and it's the same thing. Oscar's a budding serial killer. He comes in with the knife.
Right. He doesn't go through with it.
But he doesn't go through with it because he's a kid, but he watches it happen and closes the door because he has that in him. So it's like that line is so yeah, like from a cinematic point, I loved all those characters and I even like the dumb cat stuff because I thought it was really funny. And it's like a relief from the rest of this movie, which is so quiet.
I didn't even find it I did find it kind of scary. Like it's,
oh yeah, it's still fucking scary, but like in the campier way where you're like, ah,
well, I also like that new rule of like cats can sense vampires. Like that's a fun
fucking
rule.
would.
Yeah.
Cats and Sleepwalkers, if you've ever seen
Oh,
the
no,
Stephen
I
King
haven't.
one where cats can tell who they really are.
That's fun.
Yep.
I wonder if
cats are a
dogs
little magic.
can too.
No, dogs love everybody.
Yeah, dogs are dumb. Dogs are
Well,
too
that's
dumb to
usually
sense.
if a dog doesn't like you, it's a big thing. Of like, dogs are good judges of character. So if a dog doesn't
Right.
like somebody,
Right.
you
But
That's
usually
also,
what I
if a
agree.
cat hisses at nothing, you're like, it's being a cat.
Right, exactly. You're like, you just hate everybody.
I thought part of the movie that was really effective to me, which is such a small part, is the couple of kids you see in the bully ring who don't want to bully.
Yes.
And are
Yes.
being bullied into being bullies
Yes.
and who cry during the bullying.
Yeah.
And
She spares one of them.
The
Yes.
one who opts out. He's the little.
But there's one more that also is like, I don't think we should do this. And she kills him too.
But he's standing with them. The kid she doesn't kill goes
is the one who sits by himself.
and sits by
and cries.
himself and covers his face and cries. But you also see how the main bully
Yeah.
is
being
bullied
bullied
by, his brother.
Yep.
So again, that's the complication of the whole thing. There's
Right.
like no bad people. You just see how sad even the bully is.
Right.
Well,
Even the
'cause
main
probably
bully
the
doesn't
older
wanna do it.
brother is bullied by the dad or something.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like,
It's a cycle.
Yeah.
right. You see how it. Yeah,
No
how
one's
it
just good
becomes
or bad. It's
right.
like what you're taught and
You
what
s-
you know.
and you see how like pain
Your own
begets
form
more
of survival.
hurt people.
Yeah.
Hurt people.
It's so true.
You know.
And that's where I think it's really tricky, especially in this like time of Me Too, deciding that somebody is all bad or all good. I think, it's sort of there, but for the grace of God, go you or I, in terms of people that have suffered abuse, whether they act out or they become advocates for the victims. And I don't know that we really control that. It's just what we have exposure to.
Well, and I think like again, why I love this movie is it's like I think art is not there to make judgments.
Right.
It's there to show us the stories.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh,
And to ask questions.
and to ask questions and be like, okay, would Oscar have grown up to become a serial killer, or is he just like a disaffected future horror fan?
Right.
Like I was reading Stephen King and freaking my friends out at 12, but like I'm not going to kill anybody.
Yeah.
So you can relate to him, but also you're a little worried for him. Same thing with Ellie.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, like yes, she's a child vampire, but she's also a kid who's moved around a lot and doesn't have any friends and is like, do
Yeah.
I smell funny? Like,
Right.
like so your heart breaks for
Right.
for that character in that sense. And that was to me is it read as a love story because these people who are
Like two misfits.
find each other and they're so fucked up that nobody else in the world would want them, but they find a way to connect with each other.
Yes,
And,
except I feel like she's using him.
and she's totally using
Yeah.
him, right? So that's the fucked up part about it. It's not
Yeah.
like a happy, sweet, uncomplicated.
Yeah.
Well, and you could say in a lesser extent that he's using her because he needs somebody to defend him in this world.
Right. But I don't think that's her appeal to him.
No,
Yeah.
he's just like, will you go study with me?
Yeah.
Do you want
I
to
just
get
felt
ice
so much
cream?
like he was so alone in everything that to have
Right.
somebody who's taking charge of anything is like got to be so
That's
comforting.
true, but I think it's more in the way that when you're so alone, it's easy to fall in love because
Yeah.
one person seems like your savior. you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because he didn't know that Ellie would rescue him at the end.
No.
Like, and also that's one of my favorite scenes in all of
Oh,
movies.
it's so well done.
when they put him under, when the bully's holding Oscar underwater and you're on his face underwater, and then you see the kids start to panic. They don't want him to drown in front of him because
Yeah.
that's too fucking hard. And they're like, no, no, no. And then you're back on Oscar underwater, and so you're so nervous for him that that like something awful's gonna happen, that he's gonna drown, or that he's gonna cut his eyeball out, which is what he
Right.
threatened.
Yeah, which that part was really interesting because earlier the bullies said not on the face.
Yeah, but that was before he busted his brother's
Yeah, but so I
ear.
thought that was interesting that it's like we're really heightening things. And
Yeah.
then you can kind of see that the kids are almost like, this is too far.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Either
yeah.
of those
Definitely.
things are like too far.
Right. It's only the older brother, it seems, who really is desperate
the-
to go on with it.
Yeah, because older brother is like the big bad bully, right? He's like
Right. I think
the last level in the video game.
Yeah.
and so it's that scene where you don't know that, and then
And it's weird to me. I love this that the older brother bullies the younger brother, but I think it's all a pride thing. Once somebody else fucks with his brother, it's like that's a reflection of me, and I have to I can hurt my brother, but you can't, so you're
Yeah.
gonna lose an eye.
I mean that's all abusive relationships where they view the other
Yeah.
person as an extension of their property.
yes.
Well, okay, so the pool scene I have like conflicting views on because part of me really likes how it's done.
Yeah.
That Oscar stays in the pool the whole time and we stay with him.
And the limbs just land in the pool. It's
And then
amazing.
the other part of me really wanted Oscar to see it, and I wanted us to see it, because I think there is a way of like protecting the gruesomeness of Ellie, because every time she does something gruesome, it's like in the shadows, or we don't really see it.
Well, that's why I love it, though.
It's like
that's
you
why
can't
it reads as a
see.
fucked up love story to me, because the focus isn't on her brutality. It's how her brutality saves him from like death or losing an eyeball. Like at that point, like he is being held underwater and he's helpless. And then you see it feels like, oh my God, this magical vindication where you see there's that awesome shot where he's underwater and you see the feet of the kid being dragged through by
good.
like her flying. Like the logistics of it are like, you become aware that Ellie's more supernatural than we've even seen so far.
Right.
So you see the feet kicking and you're like, oh my God, wait, is that Ellie? And then you see the head come off and then the hand detaches from his arm. It's just
so
like
good.
everything that was scary, that was holding him down, like kind of falls away. And he's protected from the full extent of her monstrosity by this like underwater cocoon. You know, it's this
He's like in the womb.
yeah, it's this like dream-like space where the sound comes from far away. And then when she lifts him up from the water, and then the first thing you see is a close-up of her eyes and a close-up of his eyes. So it's about their connection, and then they're like wide shot of the like total fucking slaughter that happened in the pool.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, but also that's more convincing to me, because when I see people being gruesomely ripped apart on camera, I'm like, oh, like, is that a prosthetic? Is that CGI?
Right.
Cool effect. Like, I immediately go into this space, but if it happens off screen, then my imagination fills it in and it feels more real to me and thus more affecting. So that when you see them all like dead as fuck and you're like, did she rip his face off?
Well, it's like there's the moralistic part of me, though, that was like, I want to see their face when they're like, oh no, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
There's almost that part where I just wanted
see
to see,
that.
and I wanted to see it too, and this doesn't happen in real life, but I did want to see when he got hit in the ear. You know, I wanted to see the kid be like, oh, I shouldn't mess with that kid. You know, it's like I want that bully to have that moment of like regret that we never get. And it's not, you know, sometimes we don't get that in real life, so it's not like I need it, but I did
I love this conversation because I visually and like in my body and in my brain and in my heart, I love the way it's done too. Like it's so beautiful seeing the feet drag against the water and it just hints at everything she does instead of showing it so overtly, and it engages your imagination in a more powerful
God, that
way.
poor other kid
Fully
is going to be in
agree.
therapy for the rest
Oh my
of his life.
God, for sure. But
He's
then,
like, I closed my eyes and I looked up and they were all murdered. And the police are like,
My friends
yeah,
were all
sure.
slaughtered.
right. He's number one suspect in that.
for sure.
But then at the same time, to your point, Jessica, I do really wonder how the movie would feel if they did overtly show the brutality.
Well,
and you're
and you
like,
could
oh, maybe
say
you can't root for her. She's a
that-
monster.
Maybe part of the reason why they don't show the brutality is because Oscar already shut the door. Wait, was that,
Yeah.
did that already happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, Oscar already shut the door on her brutality, as in like, I know what's happening and I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And she doesn't want him to see it either because she's protecting their relationship. And that's like what I love about this movie, why it's so deeply creepy to me, is because every aspect of it is creepy. Their relationship is creepy. The morality of how they're like, we're in love, right? Is how they like cast it as this like, not cast it, but like, you know, place it as this beautiful, quiet love story when it's really about a 200-year-old vampire grooming their next caretaker, which is a
Yes.
profoundly horrible idea. But you feel like they've won. And so that space of like uncomfortability is, I love that. I'm like, oh God, because it makes it stick with me more than if they were like, and she's bad and she has killed a bunch of people and he sees it and he's horrified and he chooses it anyway. That's like, no, they leave them in the dream.
Yeah.
They leave them in this dream of like connection with each other where
and
he
they
just
move on
sees her
to a new
eyes.
crime scene, essentially. And
Yeah.
then a new one and a new
Well,
one.
and
a new one.
him shutting the door, I think, is also just like
Yeah.
acceptance.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the moment where you see he chooses her side.
Yeah.
Where he's like, no, I'm not gonna, and I actually don't even want to see it.
Right.
And then
I'm going to let it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, I felt really, like you were saying, the Wendy and Peter Pan thing. I was always really sad at the end. I'm like, go with Peter Pan, Wendy. He can fly. Like, what do you want? Like, get out of there.
Yeah.
And so the end. So then this movie has almost two endings where she kisses him goodbye with her mouth covered in blood, which again, like I could not relate more to. I have to go. And then the fact that they do end up together is like both wish fulfillment and very chilling.
Yes.
And she remains like tucked in a box, like doing the Morse code at him, which is like, oh, they figured out how to communicate during sunlight. How sweet. Like, you know, and so like that's what keeps me coming back to it, because it has all those layers. So you can read it in a variety of ways. And here's, do you want to hear some like fun, nerdy filmmaking facts about it? Because I really dug into it when I was obsessed with this. So the whole thing was they went through hundreds and hundreds of amateur actors to cast Eli and Oskar. It was all a chemistry read. They were just like, you guys together, you guys together, you guys together. And when the director saw them together, they were like, oh yeah, this is it. Because it's like you can't, like with kids, you can't really force that.
Yeah.
You just sort of have to allow it.
That.
So I thought that was like really, really cool. And then the character of Eli, many times during the movie, there's a lot of special effects around that character. Her voice is frequently dubbed over by a grown woman actress.
Oh, there were
I
moments
didn't
where
know
I thought it
that.
sounded like a man.
Well,
A grown man.
That deeper voice.
Yeah.
It was, and they like blend it in at certain times,
Yeah.
depending on how hungry she is.
Oh,
Interesting.
that's
So like the
cool.
hungrier she is, the deeper the voice
Like
becomes.
guttural.
Well,
So
there's
it's-
one moment where she's saying, I can't remember the line, but she's saying, this is the first thing I ever heard you say, was when he's like posing with his knife and repeating stuff that the bully said to him.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
thought it was maybe his voice coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, I think that in that sense it was like a magic voice tricks.
Yeah.
But and then in other moments in the movie, you see that they CGI morph her face to
She
look
gets old.
to look old.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
noticed it twice, I think.
Like when
and then her eyes, too, turn
But
Yeah,
like,
I saw the eyes.
but if you watch it, as many times as I have, you can see there's little moments where her eyes are a little bigger. She's a little more gaunt. Like there's a lot of subtle CGI manipulation too, not just the couple scenes where she looks like an old woman.
She does also look healthier after she feeds, which I love.
But then I kind of only see it when they're like, oh. And then you see the actor who's the 12-year-old girl. You're like, oh, now you look like a real baby 12-year-old. And you're like, oh, that's how she actually looks. And then all
Right.
those other kind of variations of hers, like makeup and CGI. And I thought that was just fascinating to. Like, what a cool character to create is, like, use this kid, but then add the depth of the voice of a grown woman, I think is very haunting and, like, a little bit, and, like, unnerving because you're like, oh, it kind of seems too grown up to be coming from her. But it's not enough that you're like, oh, that's not a
it's
kid.
still subtle.
You're like, oh. So those are I was like, ooh, filmmaking tips.
Now that I know Illy's backstory, and I don't know what their preferred pronoun would be, but we know that Eli was born a boy and keeps saying I'm not a girl, and then we see the homosexual relationship with the dad, where I wonder if now that's done more deliberately to reflect the relationship with
Oh, that's
Eli.
interesting.
Interesting.
Well, but I thought it was
I had no
like
idea.
watching it this time. I was like, this is actually a really sweet queer love story because Ellie over and over again is like, I'm not a girl, and he's like, whatever.
Right.
Like Oscar is totally unbothered by,
Yeah.
and
Well, he's just looking for somebody.
yeah. But like their connection is so much. He does is connected to them, Ellie as a person, which is really, what's going steady going to change. Nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
And they like hold hands and so I was like, oh, he's like, whatever.
Right.
Like, he's not like, why aren't you a girl? What do you mean?
Right. He's like, I like you, whatever that
He's
is.
like, whatever, however you want to call it, which is different than the age thing because he's like, how old are you?
Right.
And Ellie goes around 12. And, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 12 years, 9 months, and 3 days. What do you mean around? When's your
love
birthday?
that. Yeah.
And again, I love that. I'm like, that's super fucking specific and real.
Yeah.
But that's different than his reaction to their gender, which is
Right.
like, yeah, no, whatever, that's fine. Do you want to like go steady?
And maybe some of that comes comes from the exposure to his dad, even if he can't tell what it is.
Interesting.
Where he hasn't learned to be like, no, you have to be a girl or I can't date you.
Yeah. Interesting. But I think, again, the way the movie plays that character of Oscar, he seems like such a pure, like, innocent.
Yeah.
Like, it's like he doesn't know he's going to be a killer yet. He just likes watching murder stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I do too, and I'm not a killer.
Exactly. And so there's a sweetness and an innocence to him, which is why you said he reads as younger. But to me, it's like, I know 12, like, I remember being 12 and some of the boys were like children and some of them were like going through puberty.
Yeah.
And so that he
range.
and so he's still in the like child part of that.
Yeah.
And that's hard when you're still like wanting to play with toys and other kids are like, that's a kid thing.
Yeah, right. Can we I love that nurse when she shows up, when Eli shows up to find, what is his name?
Serial killer.
Yucca?
Yucca.
No,
Yucca's
that's the guy who gets killed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What is the serial killer's name? This is going to make...
Yucca's the one who gets killed.
Yucca's the one who gets
the
killed.
underpass.
Oh,
yes.
okay. Okay, that makes sense.
And that they find his body on the field trip.
To find, after he's maimed himself, her
Yes.
caretaker. And she goes up, she's wearing no shoes, which is like kind of sweet and beautiful and haunting in the snow. And she goes up to, I don't know if it's a nurse or a receptionist.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Probably
who are
one
you
and
here to
the same.
see? Yeah, probably both. And she says,
Haken
Haken, thank you.
is the name.
She says, they ask what the name is.
The
I'm
one
looking for
who
my
the-
father.
Yeah.
She's like the one who the police brought in.
She didn't give enough information necessarily to explain who he was, but I felt like the nurse was she was reading between the lines and being like, oh, this is the one, her father's a crazy murderer.
Well, I think
Poor thing.
that is right. That is right. The nurse did
And she
read
says, oh, you poor thing. And I just was like, oh, I love that she's not like, I need a name, or she just like kind of sees what's happening and is immediately empathetic. And then the shot of her outside climbing the walls.
Oh my
is
God.
so good.
It's so good and creepy. But also like the vampire thing with no shoes. Like,
Yeah.
how do you, Oscar goes, why aren't you cold? And she's like, I guess I've forgotten how. And he's like, again, like his face is like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
You know, like he calls it out when it's not a thing. And he's like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
But like, I think that's why the snow makes it so impactful too, is because barefoot in the summer doesn't have quite the same as like a child's bare feet covered in snow. Like anybody with a beating human heart is like, oh my God. And so this image that makes you be like, oh, can I warm you up and protect you is used on the monster in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's what's so interesting to me about it, you know?
Yeah.
Is you're like, oh, like you feel so protective and you see how vulnerable Ellie is.
You have empathy for what seems to be like a lack of resources and help, which is actually just a superpower.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you don't have a dad and you don't have shoes and you're poor. And it's like, oh no, I just like feed off of humans and I don't feel the cold.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go kill that guy. That's my
Well, and
dad.
it's also like something that makes us weak. The fact that she can be out there and, you know, get Yaki under the bridge or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, you poor thing out here in the cold where we're all vulnerable in the cold.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting that she's clearly so capable. Like when she does feed on someone, it's not that difficult, but she's still enlisting this older, frail man.
Well, because she's trying to keep her. She has to live somewhere where she won't be disturbed in the daytime.
Right.
You know, because of the sun. And she can't dispose of the bodies. Like, they find that out really quickly.
Yeah.
She's still, Hakan, the caretaker, still has to, like, they get in a fight because he has to find the body and, like, dispose of it. And then they find it out.
Once she feeds, she should be strong enough, like we saw in the pool scene, where she could just lift the body and throw it somewhere.
Yeah, but I think it's like,
she wants to hide probably right after she's done.
It's
like how after I eat, I just want to sit down. I don't do all the work.
It's like a full Thanksgiving meal. She just needs a nap.
But that part, when you see her under the like underpass and she attacks that guy, made me so mad. So I was like, she is making that guy do all the serial killing and collecting the blood, and she could do it. Like,
I wonder if some of it is also him desperately trying to stay relevant in her life,
Could be,
where he wants her to need him. So it's like, I'll go collect this for you, and I'll
getting
dispose
so
of the
bad at
body.
killing.
But
it
is
was
it
so
like
hard to watch?
Is it like Postmates versus making your own dinner? You're like, I could just order in.
Yeah, that's it, basically. I love that. I think that's exactly it.
Right.
Okay, can we talk something that I was confused about when they're scheming, and it feels very much like Carrie, leading up to that scene at the end where she kills everybody. But he goes to the bathhouse or whatever they call it. I think it's called, there was a sign that said bad.
Oh, yeah. And
it looks like there's pee on the floor, and they never address it. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the coach says something.
What
He
does he
looks
say?
over and says like, "Ugh, da da da." But it was like but it wasn't associated with Oscar. It was just
He was like, why is that? They just have like pee on the floor.
Oh, I don't
yeah,
remember.
there's like an empty thing next to it, or like a sponge or something right next to it.
Yeah,
and I
like a
couldn't tell.
towel or a.
So I was like, did it spill out of somewhere? Or
Wait, there's
I
just a
couldn't tell what it
scene where
was.
because earlier in the movie they stuff his pants in the urinal
That was hard to watch.
as a bullying thing. And again, like all the bullying so by the time Ellie kills all his bullies, you're like, fucking great. Like, I was so stoked. You know, usually in horror movies, they're like, oh, they learn a lesson or they get away. But like, no, she fucking murders those bullies. And it was profoundly satisfying for me.
Interesting, because I didn't remember the hesitation from the bullies till this time. So I remembered that they were all going to die. And then I'm like, oh, but he's remorseful and he doesn't want to do it.
No, they're little kids, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it never
They're not
lets
fully
you
formed humans.
Yeah, it never lets you forget that they're little kids. So you still are on the hook. Like, there's no caricature about it.
Yeah.
And
Well, in that beginning bullying scene where the main bully is like forcing the other kid to do it, like hit him, keep going, and the kid doesn't want to, it's like he learned that from his brother, probably being like,
Right.
no, you have to hit this person. And it just keeps going.
Hurt people hurt people.
But it's so that part of it I thought was so effective and just so sad to see that they're just kids and everyone is being forced into something they don't want to do, and then they just keep going because you don't want to be, if you're not the bully, you're the bullied,
Right.
and it's like you have to pick a side.
Yeah, it's so true. Even as adults, we carry that, but especially as kids.
Because I did think after the kid got hit in the ear, I thought it was going to be like, you know, the pecking order thing of like now all the kids like Oscar and pick on the other guy because he was weak.
Yeah. And
But
you do
that
kind of
doesn't
start to
happen.
see that, but it's a trick, right? Like where he
Yeah.
calls him and is like, you were right. And like, that seems believable.
Yep.
And they're exploiting that.
Well, yeah, I mean it, but it's also that horrible trapped feeling of when you're being bullied. You're like, maybe if I do something, it'll stop it, and it just makes it 10 times worse.
Right.
You know, and so that felt very real
Or
to
it's
me
like
too.
a Christmas story when he finally fights back, then everyone's like cool with him because they've seen the bully get
I've
taken
never
down.
seen A Christmas Story.
Me neither.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, guys! It'll be on Christmas 24 hours a day on TBS.
I'm a It's a Wonderful Life kind of girl.
But there's a
I
great
know what
scene in
happens,
that.
but I haven't seen
In
it
A
either.
Christmas Story, okay, spoilers for Christmas Story. The main kid is getting beaten up by these two bullies throughout the movie, and then he just at one point cannot take it anymore, and he fights back to like the 10th degree where he won't stop hitting them, and then he gets pulled off by his mother, and the kid's like all bloody, and then all the other kids look at the bully who's now bloodied, and they laugh at him because they're like, "Look at you." You're
Yeah.
just as weak as all of us, and then the
Right.
bully never has power again throughout the movie.
But but also it's different the way they frame it in Let the Right One In, because he hits him in the ear with a metal rod. So
Yeah.
it kind of it's not like fighting back. He like ruptured this kid's. He like lost his ear forever.
Yeah.
And so it's an injury that has to go to the. He says it. He had to go to the ER. In a way that it would just keep him weird because he's already weird. They're like, oh, now you're the weird kid
That hit someone.
that like caused somebody to go deaf.
Yeah.
Like it's even weirder than
Right.
just like punching him in the face.
But I do still think that it knocked the bully down a few pegs, and that's
Yeah.
part of why the brother really steps
to
up.
step
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And be like, you're not going to be a laughing stock at this
Yeah,
school. No
yeah.
brother of mine. you
Yep,
know?
yep. He's like, I'm gonna kill your friend. You know,
Yes.
cut his eyeball out, which is just like a horrible.
I was really
thing.
scared before he even says that, just with the radio at the edge of the pool.
I know, me too. I was like, are they gonna? No, and they're like, but it.
And then he pushes it in, and it's fine.
and it's fine because like it would
batteries.
be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
It's not a hairdryer.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
the
right,
radio,
this
the
was-
battery's just like
Yeah.
die.
But it was still so nerve-wracking.
That's so funny to me. When that happened, I was like, the party's over. They cut the music. Like,
Yeah,
no more
yeah.
aerobics.
It was nerve wracking how the brother was like, so you know who I am, and you know why I'm here, right? So here's what's going down. Like he doesn't even try to threaten him, which is very like mob movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it was.
It's like cold as fuck because he
Yeah.
doesn't have to be scary. He's like, you know, I'm gonna fuck you up. So like, let's get right to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to explain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, our last movie was Pan's Labyrinth, and I had a similar scene where the bully the horrible captain, says the thing of like, I'll let you go if you can count to 3 without stuttering to the stutterer.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as this.
You can't
3
win.
comes up if you can hold your breath for 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Oh my God.
Which
She's
is
like, that's impossible.
No, you know,
which she says that's impossible.
Yeah.
And it's both things. It's this like horrible, sure, you can win. Or it happened in funny games too. This idea where he's like, if you recite it backwards, I'll let you go. It's,
Right.
This keeps coming up.
Well,
these,
that's, yeah.
There is, it's like this idea of like, no, I'm a fair person and I'll let you go.
Right.
But I'm never actually going to let
Why
you
is it so scary? Is it just posturing?
No,
Like you
it's
could
psychological torment.
Right.
Because you set up a way
out
for the victim
Yeah.
to get out of it, but it's
That's impossible.
impossible.
And then it's almost your fault that you couldn't get out.
Exactly.
Right.
So
There
now
was a way out.
So it's like it puts the onus on you. It's like it's your fault all the ways. Like
Yeah, I
you
was
can't
going to
even-
be generous.
And like, how are you gonna? What choice do you have? You're like, I guess I'll try to count to 3 without stuttering, or like, all right, like I'll hold my breath, and So it to me, the psychological torment of that just adds to it.
Yeah.
And that's the sadistic part of it. He's not just like, oh, I'm doing this as a job, and I'm gonna like. He's like, no, I want you to like suffer in all the ways.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and
to
he
your point, it is
doesn't
the sadistic killers that do
Yeah.
it. The ones that like
Yep.
really take pleasure, which is
Well, and he doesn't say
horror
like,
movies,
go
fodder.
underwater and hold your breath and I'll be here when you get up. He holds his head under.
yeah.
Yeah.
So even if he wants to come up for air, he probably can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, is he going to drown him? And then I was like, is he going to drown him? And then, or is he just going to have him in there long enough to lose consciousness? Because
That's what
that
I
would
was
probably
thinking.
be easier to take his eyeball out. Like, go into the logic of it. Yeah. But can we talk about the Shakespeare quote that Ellie leaves him?
Oh yeah.
Oh, what is it? I don't remember.
So then they spend the night in his bed together after she kills Hakan. And in the morning he finds a note, and we see later that the note says, I must be gone and live or stay and die, which is what
Yes.
Romeo says to Juliet.
Ah.
In Romeo and Juliet.
It's really framing it as this like doomed love story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
again,
have so many problems with Romeo and Juliet's relationship.
no, there you go. Again, it's a doomed love story. And it's another example of manipulation, because does he know Shakespeare? No. But has she picked it up? For sure.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
She was probably there with Shakespeare when he wrote it.
Yeah. Well, and this is again why I don't know. I related to it as a love story, because it's like using like all of her she has all this trauma. Ellie has all this trauma that is that she frames in like the prettiest way. Because he's like, how did you get up here? She goes, I flew.
Yeah.
It's like,
So
I'm a vampire.
magical.
Yeah, it's so magical, the whole
Yes.
thing. You're like, she flew. She lives this Romeo and Juliet note.
Yes.
She kills his bullies in a way where he doesn't have to do shit about it. He just like comes up out of the water like a peaceful sweetie.
I didn't see anything.
Yep.
There's another literary reference where in the class they're talking about Bilbo had escaped.
Oh, yeah, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And I wondered, is that like normal reading material? I wonder why that's in there.
Well, it's the 80s too, so like there's
And are we just assuming because of the way it looks? Because I feel like sometimes other countries are sort of
Well, I
behind
think
or
I
certain
read somewhere
areas.
that
yeah, and it's set in
Okay.
the 80s,
Okay.
yeah. But that
Rubik's Cube is the...
Yeah. But they don't tell you. Like, because I remember when I was in, what is it called? In Israel, in Ramleh, not Ramallah, but Ramleh, it's like behind compared to Jerusalem
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like the 80s there.
in Europe.
Well, but
in
Lord
Europe
of the
too.
Rings, I think,
Yeah.
has been standard reading for a long time.
I never thought that was like something you had to read in school.
Well,
never did.
I got read to in elementary school, like when I was a kid, like really, really young. Like I would say before third grade, I remember the teachers would have reading time. But what stuck to me about that scene where the teacher is reading everybody Lord of the Rings at the end of the class, and then in a similar way, how there's that scene with Oscar and his mom where they're both brushing their teeth.
Oh,
It's just these like tiny little moments that I feel like most horror movies don't spend any capital on. They're like, no. But in this movie, they're like, here's like a little bit of like grounded reality, like some sweetness almost, some like tenderness. Because what struck me about that moment was how the kids are on the edge of their seats listening to the story.
Yeah.
They're like,
I love
totally.
at the end she blows out a candle.
Yeah.
Like she really set the mood for the reading.
But she
lit a candle.
I didn't notice
But
that.
you see her go like, and Bilbo said da 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 da, and one kid goes like is like into it, and then she closes the book, and everybody kind of like comes to, and she's like, all right, that's it for the day, and then they get the fuck out. And so it's like sort of like this storytelling spell, like how
Right.
telling a story can captivate people. And that moment where he and his mom are brushing the teeth, it's like one of the few moments in the movie where they're together
And it's
and
happy.
like connecting
Yeah.
with each other, and you see how their relationship is good sometimes. Like,
Well, and even when she's yelling at him and we can't hear what she's saying, it's clear that she was very worried about him being
Yeah.
gone all night.
Yeah.
Like she cares. I don't think she's a bad mom.
no, but it takes it out of the like want Charlie Brown space
Right.
for me.
It makes her real.
Yeah.
Because you like see a mom like
Right.
goofing around with her 12-year-old
Yeah.
son. Like, what other way do you know, like how else
Right.
do you connect with
My
your
favorite
kid?
was right after the Lord of the Rings reading when everyone leaves and he's still like studying because he's studying the Morse code, I think, at that
Yeah.
point. And the teacher's like, are you leaving? And he's like, no, I got work to do. I just the idea that like, he's like, no, I'll lock up later. And then he does. I was like, wow, they really give kids like leeway.
That again read very 80s to me, where they're like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, in my school, the teacher would have been like, no, I got to lock the room. I want to go home.
You're out of here.
Yeah, it felt very adult to me of him being like, no, I'll lock up. I got it.
After you digging into Lord of the Rings stuff, Megan, it also feels kind of meta to me of like these kids are
Yeah.
lost in this fairy tale,
Yep.
even though they're basically living in a fairy tale that we're watching.
Yeah, it's like, you know, like a good, and the way Ellie frames her story to Oscar is again poeticized with the Shakespeare and like I flew and you know
Yeah.
like and it shows how you can be captivated by the story, and especially how kids that age are so
Right.
captivated by stories.
Yeah.
You know,
I feel like if she really loved him, and same goes for Håkon, that she would have turned him into a vampire. And then it's like, we can live out eternity forever. But I think she likes that they will age and she'll continue.
well, I think it's more that she needs like a caretaker who's going to be able to pass as an adult.
But why?
To have a safe place to sleep at night.
Yeah.
To be able to move constantly.
Well, I don't think she does love them.
No, I don't think she does either.
No, but they frame it as such.
Right.
And
I think that's
and
how
we
she
read it.
gets it.
Yeah. And like the reason why she picks a 12-year-old is not because she wants to be in love forever, is because that's the age at which she can most firmly manipulate.
Right. And insert herself as the figure. in
Yeah,
their
as
life.
like the one thing you're like they're obsessed with their whole
Right.
lives.
Well, and I wonder if I would have seen this. I mean, I did see it earlier, but I wonder what my opinion was then because I'm just too jaded now to be like, it's a love story. I was like, clearly this is not a love story.
I mean, but you could say that about Romeo and Juliet too.
Yeah,
I know. If I read that now for the first time, would I be like, clearly? I don't know. I'm just so jaded about relationships and what is a healthy relationship that right away I was like, this is troublesome.
Oh, it wasn't never healthy. It was just beautiful. Like the movie had me from the. I remember when I saw it at like the old Sundance Theater where the Lumley is now on Sunset.
That might be where I saw it.
Yeah. I think it was
Yeah.
like playing 3 places, and I was wildly excited for it. And I remember the night that I saw it, I had like worked all day and I had done something anyway, I had very, very little sleep. I had like 4 hours of sleep. I was so dizzy. Like I was so tired, I was dizzy. And I was like, oh man, am I going to fall asleep during this movie? And then it started with the snow. It just like starts with this black screen and then this
yeah,
quiet
I liked that whole opening.
snow falling down. And from that moment, I was like, captivated. Like it just had me utterly. I was like, oh my God, it's so quiet. Because like, I also like horror movies that are quiet and beautiful and dreadful, you know, that aren't like, whoa, like, whoa, there's lots of whoa, you know. And so that it got that tone right away.
Yeah.
I remember being so tired that I was like just my eyes were just willed open by my love of what I was seeing. And then I went back and saw it again in the theaters because I was like, do I even remember what happened? It was like a fever dream to me. I was so exhausted. And so that like in that state, the way they framed the whole thing as a love story was really impactful toward me. Also, again, I was with a guy. We were like, you're him and I'm her, right? Okay.
I remember.
We're like, oh, and like in retrospect, it's like, yeah, we were, and that was a bad idea.
I It was just like holding up a mirror to your life.
Yeah. I was like, oh, we love each other for very fucked up reasons.
Amir and I once had a conversation. We were talking about the word jealousy. I feel like this is to your point of like, is this a love story? That like, Amir really doesn't get jealous, but the one time that he did, he's like, well, I wouldn't call it jealousy. It was almost, I think sometimes jealousy is just the most convenient term, but what we really mean is it's not like I'm jealous of your relationship. It's that I feel like you're being a little bit disrespectful towards me right now because you're being like flirtatious with somebody else. And it's not like I'm jealous of that flirtation and I want it. It's more like,
I feel like it's being left out.
yeah, being left out. Or disrespected, right? Like we'll kind of put anything that's like jilted lover into the jealous category, but it's not being desirous of something that you're giving someone else. It's just like, I don't want you to give that to somebody else. Like it's not necessarily you don't give that to me. It's more just like, why does this other person get to have you in this way? And I think similarly, what we're describing a lot of the time, like in Romeo and Juliet, is infatuation or lust. But we put it under the category of love just because it's easier.
Well, yeah, but like also our culture frames love in this Romeo and Juliet fucked up way.
That's true.
It's
Love at first sight.
Yeah, and all of that is messed up. And like also it's in retrospect hugely codependent.
Right.
At the time, I thought that was wildly romantic. I was like, oh, she needs him to like stop her from bursting into flames. And like, oh, they figured out a way to talk to each other at all times.
Yeah.
There's like a moment, I feel like, when you're growing up where you learn like, oh, you shouldn't need somebody.
Yeah.
That's not, because I do remember being younger and being like, that's what you need is to need somebody.
Yeah, that happened for me this year. So
I think there's a movie where someone says, I don't need you, but I want you, like a rom-com that I can't place.
Oh, that I don't know, but I've said that to Brad before.
Yeah.
Like, I could break up with you and I would be okay, but I don't want to.
Yeah. And I have a hard time in my relationship sometimes where I'm like, oh, if we broke up, he'd be fine. And actually, that's healthy.
That's
and like
good,
eventually I'd be fine. But there's a part of me because of all the training that's like, that's fucked up. That's not real love. If you don't want to die the moment I'm gone, then you don't love me.
When I used to have like crushes on boys and they would feel all encompassing, I was always like, this is a problem. I don't like feeling like this. That it's like I can't eat, can't
That's just
sleep.
obsession. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well,
and that's what I
yeah.
think this is. It's obsession.
and codependency, and that's like so much of how romantic love is framed in our culture. And like again, literally this year I was like, that's not how it should be.
And is it even American culture? Because we're talking about a Swedish movie. Is that like a global thing?
Well, probably Romeo and Juliet's British.
Western, the way Western culture frames love, this like romantic
Eastern
love.
culture?
And soulmates.
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I
like I
wonder.
didn't grow up in that, but yeah.
But
like,
even from movies, I'm like, what have I seen? I don't know.
well, it's such a different. It's so apples to oranges to me. But the idea of like, even in Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare's like, no, this isn't love. You're infatuated.
Yeah.
Like
You're only 13.
Yeah, yeah. But like the idea that somebody should be your everything and that you should rely on them for like literally what it like in Let the Right One In, what you need to live.
Right. And both
And
of
if
them
not,
have
you'll
that.
die.
And if not,
they
you'll
die,
die.
I'll
And
die.
from his point of view, he's willing to do whatever it takes to help her live at the expense of other people, at the expense of his own morality, at the expense of his own freedom, at the expense of his own future.
Yeah.
Is like, it again, was wildly romantic to me.
What do you think of the title?
It's based on...
Is it a Smith song?
Yeah.
I feel like it is.
It's based on a song. It's based on a Smith song that...
I was obsessed with the Smiths growing up.
Quick edit, it was actually Morrissey, lead singer of the Smiths. Close enough.
Yeah, and so is he in the book. And so he's like, in the movie, he's like listening to all this like punk.
Yeah,
like,
there's a Clash poster on the wall.
yeah, a
in
Clash
one
poster.
scene.
So he's like into that kind of music, and that's where the title comes from.
But do you think
fun.
that she is
The right one? I think so. I think that's what it's suggesting.
But it's like a warning, too. It's like, let the right one in.
Or did he let the wrong one in?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Like, did you, like, because you have to invite her. Like, and that's another vampire thing. I'm like, no, you have to ask me to your party. I don't just show up.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so interesting. I wonder why that started with vampire lore, because especially if you look at like Vlad the Impaler or the woman.
It's great in the Lost Boys, too, how they use it.
Oh, yeah. I saw The Lost Boys early on too. That's like one of my earlier horror experiences.
I feel like that was maybe the movie that taught me that vampires had to be invited in.
But what do you think that says? Like, for somebody who literally impaled all of his enemies and drank their blood on a forest full of like spiked trees, that they need to be invited in somewhere.
Well, that's like part of the whole vampire appeal is that they're, as monsters go, more cultured, more elegant,
more polite.
Well,
more
and that
polite.
they're so powerful, but they have these like few vulnerabilities.
Right. And they also operate a lot of times on this level of seduction, like it's very sexy to like offer your neck to somebody and like you can become one, but like they can even turn you into one of them. Like it's not always a death sentence.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a path to this other lifestyle,
Be together forever.
where you're young and beautiful forever, if that's what happens. And so the idea of it like being contingent upon, social mores and those kind of like,
I like that.
There's like an elegance to it. And there's like also witch stuff where like your home is your space and there's like magic laws.
Right. I haven't watched Unbelievable, but I read the article that series is based on where, this girl is raped and then they don't believe her and she retracts her statement and then he rapes all these other people and eventually they find him. And the real story is like he raped someone and then showed her, this is how I got in. Make sure you lock your door. This thing is like not going to work. Whatever, just this like weird politeness or like thank you or apologizing. I think he spilled something and apologized.
I just listened to a podcast where they talked about a murder where the guy attacked one girl but didn't kill her, but attacked her and then afterwards is like, do you want me to walk you home? It's really dangerous out.
Wow. Yeah, that stuff is
like,
so
what is happening?
much creepier because it just makes you think like you're working by this moral code.
Yeah.
Or like somebody pointed out on here, maybe it was Amalia, about some like Hannibal Lecter being really polite, that they're like things that he would view as impolite.
Yeah, and that's like back to the thing that you were saying about funny games. Like whenever there's a code in operation, you're like it's chilling in a sense because there's a structure,
Right.
But it's just not the one that we know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes like, okay, are you willing to play by these rules? Like, what are these rules?
Right.
Like, and so it kind of throws us
And
off
there's
balance.
the illusion of vulnerability, that they could be vulnerable somehow.
Right.
In
And
this
it's not
one,
even
it's
an
that
illusion,
you
they
can't
are.
come in. And in
Yeah.
funny games, it's like, well, maybe if I get it right,
Yeah.
that's the vulnerability and I'll win.
Yeah,
Right.
but what I love about this movie again is like he does invite her in and she does come in. I think in other movies, like literally they can't
it's like
get
a force
past.
field.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
force field. But in this one, she comes in and then you see her start to bleed out. And so again, you have sympathy for this vulnerable, what appears to be 12-year-old child.
And it speaks to, again, our like
Well, she's
perverted idea of
sacrificing
love.
herself a little bit,
Yeah.
too.
That like she loves him enough to come in and bleed for him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I will
that's true
bleed out
love.
my hair because
Yeah.
you asked me to. I was
Yeah.
like, once again, I relate to this.
Yeah.
Let me give you everything I have and more.
Enough. Do you love me now?
Is there an image that you think is the scariest from this?
The scariest.
For me, I think it's when in the opening through the trees when he's like stringing up the body. That to me just was like the most haunting, I guess.
I feel like the poodle watching it was the haunting to me because all I could think was like, he's going to kill those women coming. Like
Well,
there was just something so vulnerable for him, but also I felt so vulnerable for all the two women and the dog where I was like, what is going to happen?
Well, I remember the first time I saw that, I was terrified because again, it's very like the way they shoot it. The whole thing is so visually beautiful too. Like you rarely, I mean, they're out there, but like this is one of the first horror movies I saw where I'm like, oh, like every shot looks like a painting.
Yes.
Like these are all beautiful images, and so that adds a layer to me of like artistic engagement. But that shot with the poodle, when I first saw it, I remember being like so chilled by it because the poodle doesn't just like sits there and watches
Yeah.
him. And so I was at that, like I got nervous for him because I'm like, you're going to get fucking found out. And that like
Right.
slow tension where you hear the women talking
Yes.
and then you see him try to clean up and like the snow is so deep. But
I'm nervous for everyone in
Yeah,
that scene.
for
I'm like,
everybody.
Please
You're
don't
just
kill
like,
the dog.
"Oh, it's not gonna
Tell me to
go."
find him. Yeah.
Good. And this time I thought it was really funny.
Really?
Because the dog's just like, what's up? And he's
Yeah.
like, get away. And
The
he's like,
dog's
no.
got like no taste.
yeah,
The dog is like, I'm not scared. I'm not on your side.
yeah. He's like, what's up?
Neutral.
But I don't know.
I love that when you see
Yeah.
a movie multiple times, you can have completely different reactions.
Yeah,
love
and I
that.
think my sense of deadpan humor has gotten like deeper as
Yeah.
I've gotten older.
And it's also funny that the images that were scariest to me and Jessica were the same scene but different images.
Yeah.
And I wonder what yours is now.
Well, it's I'm not really scared a lot, and like I don't know,
Or chilling or
yeah,
haunting.
it like
Yeah.
emotionally
Different synonyms.
disturbing to me is the scene. Like I remember being just so. Like, it's really hard for me to sit through the scene where he's about, like, at the pool scene at the
Okay.
end where the older brother comes in and is like, you have 3 minutes or I'm going to cut your eyeball out. Like, something about so matter of fact and it's
Yeah.
so possible and it's so real and he's so vulnerable in that moment. Like, he's a skinny kid in the pool. Like, what is he going to do? Run away? No, he can't run away.
Yeah.
He can't run away fast enough. The water's wet. All the adults are gone. They set that fire.
Right.
He's so exposed and vulnerable. And it just made me so scared and nervous for him. But...
Well, and they sent all the other kids away.
I know, that's
that are
scary.
witnesses, which is scary in the sense of like, we don't give a fuck.
No,
Yeah.
I was terrified, but like now because I know that she murders him at the end, like my brain comforts myself by being like they're
Right.
all going to get murked so
Right.
hard. Like just like hang on, this is because
Yeah.
it leads to the best triumph in the movie in my opinion, which
Yeah.
is where she swoops in and just avenges the fuck out of these assholes.
Yeah.
So now I think the most chilling image for me this time around is after Ellie goes to the hospital and the receptionist is like, poor thing. And then she walks out to look for her.
And you see her scaling the
And she's
wall.
on the wall
Yeah.
already. And you don't notice that she's on the wall until
she
she
moves.
starts moving.
Yes.
And this time I was like, I knew she was on the wall. So I was looking for her and I couldn't see
Yeah,
her.
I rewound it to be like, wait,
I was like, where
she there the whole
I was like, oh, I know she's on the wall. Where is she here? Is she here? And I couldn't see it. And I got nervous. I got scared.
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, this is a little. And then she starts to move. And there's that like feeling.
Yeah.
Hereditary does that a lot too, where
Yeah.
there's something in the edges of the frame.
yes, that's the scariest part of Hereditary
yes,
for sure.
for me is
Yes.
because you are expecting something, but like when it moves in the corner, then that's like being at home alone and you see something in the shadow and you're
Yeah.
like, is that a
Yes.
man? Is that a ghost? Is that my coat?
It's also it's also the contortion, like the way that she is on the wall outside
like
the
a
hospital,
spider, like
Yes.
a weird fucking
And it's what they
spider.
bank on in Exorcist, and it's the
Yeah.
same for me in Hereditary, where not only are you on like the fringes of the frame, but you're in a weird shape, and that's
yeah,
scary.
it's non-human. You know,
Yes.
it's not how a person would like a
It's
human
uncanny.
person.
It's like
uncanny.
almost yes.
Yeah.
I took a class in college as a joke called Fairy Tales and Nightmares. Like me and my theater major friends were seniors and we're like, let's take this fucking class. And like we were always stoned and like not everybody, like it was a joke that not all of us would show up at the same class because everybody would skip it. We're like, oh, it's just Marissa today. But I took the most from, it's weirdly I think about it the most now in my
Wow.
life because he taught, like in that class we learned about the idea of the uncanny, and that to me is better horror than like, oh, it's something scary. Like no, but like uncanny,
Right. It's like almost human.
yeah, that uncanny valley will still fuck anybody up, even if you're very jaded. If you see a mannequin
Yeah.
that is like almost human but not quite, or CGI that's almost human or not quite,
Right.
and that to me is the thing that like when I see effects that are practical but kind of bad, it almost scares me worse than really good
Interesting.
CGI because it's real but not quite, and so
Yeah.
that unreality gives me anxiety. Like poor production value gives me anxiety because I'm like, oh God, it feels so real to me, but
Right.
it's not.
It's almost real.
Yeah, and so that idea of the uncanny of like something close to human,
Right.
but it's not like a monster because I'm like, oh, clearly fake.
I want to amend my scariest images
okay,
too,
okay.
because there are two more that I keep thinking about, and they are very in keeping with the things that scare me normally, which is I always get like a sort of creep factor from something being uncanny, but I don't think that's like what haunts my dreams. But one moment is the caretaker like breathing on the floor, like still not dead, which I think I'm most afraid of, like a long drawn out death and torture. And so the other one is, and I think this is also because it like puts my heart in knots, is when he sort of maims himself or whatever when he like acid burns his face. And the moment leading up to it, him saying her name and then doing it is just so fucking painful. It's just brutal. It's like, all you can think about is her, and you're sacrificing yourself for her.
Well, again,
That's the spell.
Yeah, this time I was like watching it again, like with more of like a filmmaker's perspective. That's where I'm at right now, and I see how they set that up because, like, you see the jar, and it knocks the guy out, and then
It spills on the coat.
and then you see it spill on the coat, and so that's the first time where you see, like, oh, that's how it shows the audience this liquid burns through this coat immediately. So you're already like, okay, that's what it does. And so when he goes to pour it on his face, you know it's going to be super,
I thought he was
going to
drink it.
Yeah.
That's how he
I know.
would die.
Yeah.
That
I know.
was my thing. Because then when he
thought so
poured it
for
on
a
his face, I was
second.
like,
because he wanted her to kill him.
Well, he also wanted them to not connect him to her, and
Yeah.
they're not going to recognize him anymore as that
He
guy
didn't
with
want to
that
be
young
recognized.
girl.
And he's like, well, this is my last person to give you.
Yeah,
Is my own blood.
right.
You know?
It seemed like she could have made more of a meal of that, literally. She kind of takes a sip and then throws him out the window.
Yeah.
It is a really interesting, painful intimacy that they share when you finally see his face all like burned and she's like touching him. Do they kiss even?
No, it's so
No.
fucked up. No, but and it's again, you see the first time you see a clear shot of his burned face is after she throws him out the window and he's dying on the thing. So it's like all the horror is in that. Before that, you just see a reflection that's kind of warped in the
Right.
window.
Yeah.
And then he pulls out his thing and offers his neck to her, but not.
and then he turns.
And then he
Yeah.
turns.
Wait, when you see the reflection in the window, can you see her at all? I wondered about that rule. I haven't seen
I wasn't paying attention for that.
I wasn't paying attention for that either. Yeah, I think. I
She might be out of frame regardless.
Yeah,
where you
I don't
notice
remember.
if you-
They don't cinematically ever address the mirror thing.
Yeah.
There was never like a point made about it. You don't see her
Right.
pass in front of it. Actually, I think you do see her in a mirror.
Well, and I feel like that's one of those vampire rules that's not as used
Yeah.
because it's like it's
Well, I
like
also feel like you
Dracula
get
and
the
stuff.
choice.
They were
at
like, we have
every-
the cat thing.
But like they don't. But I don't think they do it in Buffy.
Oh, really? I thought they did in Buffy.
Do they?
Yeah.
I feel like I
remember
haven't
the mirror
seen it
thing.
as many times.
But that's what I like about the horror in this movie is that it's very not magical.
Yeah.
Like the scary parts about it are like the blood looks super real. Like you
the
never.
like, bully kid crying.
Yeah.
That part, I feel like that's the haunting part.
You don't
to me,
ever
too. That
see-
stays
yeah.
with me. It's
A
just like
mangled
the
vagina or
well, and just like the horrors of childhood,
Yeah.
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 and that stuff happens, and like the kid being forced into being a bully is like, I feel like that will stay with me from this movie.
So who are you in this movie, Jessica?
I'm probably the teacher. I would have been really into reading it, story. I would have like had the candle. I would be really into my storytelling.
Bilbo Baggins. All right.
God, I don't know who I am in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm firm. I firmly identify with Ellie.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and also the moment where like
Or the dumb dog who's just staring.
you're the poodle.
Yeah.
You're like, what's up?
I'm not sure how to feel about this.
There was a couple like with the dog as a viewer and with the kid who's the viewer who closes his eye, puts his hands over his head. I was like, are they commenting on like how we're all just watching this happen?
Right.
That there's all these moments where people just come and have to like sit through it.
Are you not entertained?
But also, they're never punished for it. Like the dog isn't punished.
Right.
The kid who
No.
sits out, she's like, you're sitting this one out.
Yeah.
You're not a part of this
Right.
crew.
I know,
like,
thank goodness.
You know, like and so there's this weird mercy in
Yeah.
it, you know, and that again makes the bullies dying so profoundly satisfying to me.
I still find it so sad. I'm like, they could have changed that.
Yeah, no, they could have
Yeah.
changed, but they were such dicks and they were going to kill that kid.
Yeah.
And like, and
Well,
again,
really-
that's what's so great is how it manipulates your sympathies. So you're like, I really want this 12-year-old budding serial killer to make it.
Yeah.
You know, like he's got such sweetness in his eyes. Again, this is my problem in romantic relationships. I'm like, but I can see the pain of where you're coming
so sad
from.
Let me kill all your bullies. I'll suck their blood. Do you want to promote anything?
Do I want to? Do I have anything to promote? No, I'm just right. Oh, no. Hopefully our short film will be online soon.
Yeah.
You can put that in the description. But yeah, I'm just writing right now.
Where can people find you on social
People
media?
can find me on social media at Megan Rosati. across all platforms. I'm very boring. It's just my name on Instagram and on Twitter. So if you want to follow me there, for sure. I post cute pictures of me. By cute, I mean covered in blood.
Yeah.
And like make really dark jokes. Oh yeah. I have an article, an opinion article coming out in Fangoria in the newest issue. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
the December Fangoria, if you want to pick that up at a bookstore near you. And it's actually thematically related. It's a humorous editorial called "Murder Me, Daddy." Why women love
Very on brand.
Why women love serial killers.
That's good. That's good.
So I dive into the appeal of characters like Oskar.
Amazing.
I want to read it.
Well,
That
we're
sounds
in
awesome.
December now, so I hope Megan's article warms your cold heart with love for
Just
serial
in time for the
killers.
holidays.
Yeah, I hope it gives you something to freak your parents out and a cute little feminist chuckle.
And I like that we will be in the second week of December now when this comes out. And I like that it's this like wintry movie. It feels appropriate.
I did when we watched this. When I watched this last night, I just dropped my mom off at the airport, and I was coming back, and you could see in Ontario, like driving back, there was snow on all the mountains because it snowed over Thanksgiving. And then I put on this movie, and I was like, "Oh, it's just like winter."
Yeah, it's like a cozy
wintry.
It's a cozy winter horror movie, and it's really quiet too, which is what I like.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of screaming. There's like it's like a really cuddler. Like I said,
That's part of the unnervingness is how quiet. Because I like I like noise, so I was like,
no.
it made me uncomfortable. All the silence.
I just realized that the one person who seems to sort of be an uncomplicated hero in this movie is the chick who's attacked by cats because she's sort of selfless in that she has these desires and is like, nope, I'd rather die. Yeah. And that's cool that there's like a woman heroine, you could argue.
Yeah. She's like, and she has the orderly open the blinds to burn her up while she's still strapped down.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
But she's fucking hungry though.
Yeah.
Like, and so she's like, no, because he unstraps the one hand and she grabs him. You're like, is she gonna kill? Is she gonna eat this guy? And she's like, no, like kill me before I kill you.
Yes.
And so that is just one of like an amazingly cool shot. Like, the fire to the thing.
so
I was
cool.
like, again, one of those images that is
It stays with you.
But
It
much
stays
like
with
the
you.
crying bully in the massacre, how is this orderly going to explain what happened?
Right.
no, yeah, and
No, I just lifted up the blinds.
And she burst into flames.
I promise, I didn't do anything.
Well, and I was at this film festival this summer listening to this big horror screenwriter talk, and he said this thing that really stuck with me. He was like, horror movies operate. He was like, what's your job as a horror screenwriter? And people like this. He's like, no, it's to keep things moving. And I was like, yep, because you don't care about all that. You're just like, what happens and what happens and what happens.
Right.
And keep things moving. I had a really good point. Oh, and he's like, and because you might get caught up in what happens after the thing bursts on fire and the order. Like, what does the order? He's like, not your problem. Movies operate on a dream logic. It's where you're like horrible thing to horrible thing to horrible thing. And so if you move through it fast enough according to this dream logic, you don't stop to think about like, well, did the orderly like report this to his supervisor right away?
Well, it's interesting because some of what makes movies so magic and some of the moments that we love in this are those stopping to think about it. Like the nurse coming out to look for her, which we don't need to see. The nurse could just go on with her life and job. But that like moment of empathy where she's like, oh, you poor thing. And then she comes out to check on her.
But it's empathy. You don't see like how Ellie gets up onto that first layer of the thing. She's just like already up there too fast to be human almost.
Yeah.
And so I love that idea. And like this movie does that really well for me is that dream logic where you're, again, it feels like a fucking love story. They shoot it like a love story and it's deeply, deeply fucked. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And so that, I love that tone mashup because it's a way to get the love story but to not feel like cheesy or sold out or like, oh, this is a happy movie.
Right.
Like, oh, cool, they're in love. It's like, oh, no, they are and it's bad.
Yeah. That's definitely what stayed with me the most the first time and this time is that feeling of you're next. You're the next caretaker. You're the next one that's going to be thrown out of a hospital room and bleeding out on the floor, on the ground, in the snow.
I'm like, but you'll solve his Rubik's Cube.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Oh, give us a subscribe and give us 5 stars, especially this episode.
Yeah. And follow us on Instagram at
He's Right Behind You podcast.
Next movie, if you want to catch up, is The Final Girls.
We know